Just so you are aware of what we're all going to be covering today. We got cleaning up chaos, and then we're going to talk specifically about the workflow tool, how to build it, and also how to implement it. Just so you know, the sessions today are going to be 50 minutes long. So we're going to be starting each session at the top of the hour. So we'll do a session for 50 minutes. We'll take a 10-minute break. And then at the top of the hour, we'll go ahead and start with the next session. We'll do that 3 times. And we should have you out of here on your way by 12 p.m. Pacific, or if you're joining from the East Coast or somewhere in between 3 p.m., 2 p.m., or 1 p.m. Let's go ahead and start by introducing your trainers. Catherine, I'm going to start with you. Go ahead and tell us about yourself, how long you've been a trainer, and what are you excited to teach about today?
All right. Good morning. My name is Catherine Beltran. I am a trainer here for just over 2 years now. I had to think about that for a hot second. But today I'm actually going to be taking through the last 2 sessions, all of workflow. So hopefully I don't annoy you too much, but at least we'll learn some things about building that process.
All right, Curtis, how about you?
Hey, my name's Curtis. I've been at Redtail for just over 8 years. Just way longer than I ever thought, but it's really exciting. I love it here. I am most excited to also teach about workflows. I'm really going to be talking about the first part, the building. You guys are going to learn a lot about my daily routines and grocery shopping. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Sounds fun. Haley, how about you?
All right, I've been here 7 years. Good morning, and a trainer for just about 4 years. And I'm most excited about cleanup. If you've ever seen one of my webinars or anything, I get really excited about cleaning up data. So of course, I'm kicking off the day with Curtis and just all things cleanup, all things data.
All right, and hey everybody, I'm Austin. I've been a trainer here for about 2.5 years. I am excited to show you the possibility of automation and using automation templates in your database to streamline your workflows and other processes that you might use inside Redtail CRM. So hang tight for that one. Let's go over just a couple of logistical items before we jump into the teaching today. First up, I want to tell you the difference between QA and chat. So QA is where you're going to go ahead and ask questions about the material that's being presented to you. So we have our boss, Ricky Redtail, here, and he is standing by ready to answer any and all of your questions about the material presented today. Now, there also are going to be some opportunities where we're going to want to engage with our audience here, and we want you to engage back with us. And for that, we're going to use the chat feature. All right. Also, some logistical items here. You're going to be getting a follow-up email this Friday, all with the information. It's got a copy of the presentation. It's going to have information about where the recording's available. And we're also going to be giving out a survey that if you take the time to fill out, we're going to select 3 lucky winners to send some Redtail swag to. So be sure to be on the lookout for that. And of course, as I mentioned, today's session is going to be recorded. It's going to be posted to both the Redtail YouTube channel and also the Redtail Help Desk. So if you miss any of the material today, you want to share it with a colleague, feel free to check out those 2 places later this week to see the recording. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and jump to the material.
All righty, really excited. Haley, I see you found you got your hard hat as well with us.
Yeah, thanks for no one telling me I wasn't wearing my hard hat team. Way to look out there, folks.
The punishment for setting off all the Alexas.
I'm sorry.
I'm kidding. All right. At this point, Austin and I are going to leave for the moment. We will be back later on today.
All right. Get out of here. Bye. Just kidding. Yeah, my hat is very tall. I don't know why it's that tall, but whatever. Also, you can't shake your head too fast, Curtis. Or
mine, you can tighten the back, but
oh.
All right. So chaos. Right. We got some chaos this morning.
I know we do.
How do we fix that?
So cleaning up chaos. So what we're going to cover in this session is we're going to talk about what makes up your database, right? So a lot of times we'll jump into talking about the CRM and we just use like unfamiliar terms or words and we say like dirty data, database expectations. And you're like, wait, it's contacts. I want to talk about my contacts. So this session is all about zooming out. Wouldn't you say, Curtis?
Yes, definitely. So we're really going to be looking at more of like stepping back away from the data, because even so many times people want to like get too far into it, too far deep into the woods. We're going to take a step back to say, okay, what is actually important to you? What do you need to focus on? We always like to talk about what is it? We say like digestible chunks. Like, don't look at it as a whole. Look at one small section. We're going to narrow down on that. But in order to see what those sections are, you do have to take a step back.
Absolutely, yeah. That's totally right. So we have to take a step back, talk about what data is, what the expectations are, how to set really firm foundations and say, this is what I want my database to look like. So when I go to a contact record, this is my ideal, this is how it's ideally filled out, or what I would like to see. And then we're going to talk about best practices. So Redtail's going to give you some recommendations and just some standards on how to set that bar, or how to define that bar. And then of course, cleanup methods, which is where we'll wrap up. And that's my favorite. So let's get started and jump right on in. So what is dirty data and where does it come from?
Well, I mean, we like to say dirty data a lot of times, but it doesn't mean it's wrong, right? Like it's just maybe like in the wrong spot. Maybe it's missing information, things like that. That's a lot of times it's like you don't actually have what you want. So that's really what, like when I say dirty data, is the same thing for you, Haley?
Yeah, exactly. It's missing information. It's inconsistent information. So maybe half of my contact records have birthdays and tax IDs, but half of them don't. Then I would say that my database has dirty data in that situation, because it's not dependable. I should be able to go to any of my client records and see a date of birth or tax.
Even like using like your statuses and categories, we'll talk about. Like I've seen times where someone has under the status where they have active client and client. They have two different ways to say the same thing. So we'll talk about like, okay, how can we fix that as well? Like all these different things, anything that is inconsistent with how data should be is going to be dirty data.
So to break it down, data is any field within the database that is filled out. So think about like in terms of an Excel spreadsheet. We've all used Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets at some point in time, right? Anything in a cell, in one of those little boxes in Excel, is data. That's the content within the cell. Now, the best way I've heard a database explained, or Redtail CRM, which is a database, is it's just Excel spreadsheets stacked on Excel spreadsheets, right? So we call them tables, really, but that's all it is. It's a bunch of Excel spreadsheets stacked on Excel spreadsheets. So it's like a three-dimensional Excel spreadsheet. Obviously, it's a little bit more complex than that, right? But that's the most simple definition. So data, when it's filled out appropriately, has the ability to report just amazing pieces of information on your clients. Yeah. If it's dirty, we lose all that ability.
Yeah. I mean, I like that you talk about Excel spreadsheets, sort of like a CRM and a database, where they're stacked on top of each other. If you're trying to like use something like Excel as a replacement for a CRM, that's essentially like going to a 3D movie, but not putting on your 3D glasses. Like you're only just gonna get a headache. Get one layer, you get a headache. It's essentially a CRM is essentially using that, is putting on those 3D glasses. So you can be like, oh, I have all these other layers I can dive into. But an Excel in its own form, like you can send information out to it so you can start working on the data, the cleanup, and go from there.
Right. Exactly. So what are some examples? Names, dates, phone numbers, emails, other contact information. That's all pieces of data. Anything that is in the CRM is a piece of data. And my favorite thing to say is that you are data gatherers. So congratulations, you're hunter-gatherers, you're data gatherers. And throw Marie Kondo out the window. You are allowed to be a data hoarder. Feel free to hoard as much of that data as you want. Redtail's got the space. So if you want to record it in the CRM, get it out of your head, put it into a team environment, into the CRM. It should be in a field in Redtail.
So speaking of hoarders, like we see right now, like I'm on your camera. I'm in, you guys can see me. See this nice blank wall. The room I'm in right now, it's a spare room, and over this pandemic, it has turned into the random stuff room. So it's like, even though it looks nice and clean, it's only this one aspect of the room. If you actually see what I see, I have piles and piles of boxes and things everywhere. Any craft thing I attempted over the pandemic is like spilled out on the floor somewhere. It's a mess. I need to focus and clean it up, but I'm not going to just do it all at once. I'm going to focus on little points of it. So if you are hoarding the data, it doesn't mean it's wrong data to have. You just need to set it up and organize it in a way that's going to be best for you.
Right.
No, I am not showing a picture of this horrible room. I am the only one who gets to see it.
Now I want to see it. And remember that Redtail's an out-of-the-box solution. So much of the structure of the CRM is finite. You're not able to move around a lot of the boxes or customize a ton of it. And that's because we've already designed the closet for you, if you will, right? So there's already correct places. There's already a shoe rack and, a bar for clothing hangers. There's already a structure to the organization. And all you have to do is put in the right information in the right spaces. There is, of course, a place where you can customize your own fields, and we'll talk about that later in this training. But primarily, the structure's there. We've got the bones. The IKEA closet is already built, right? Yes. So we're just talking about putting things into that closet. And then where does the bad data come from, Curtis? Who's to blame?
I don't know. I would just blame... Oh, there's too many people. No, it comes from, I would say, just inconsistent ways of doing it. Like every time, like you say, okay, I'm going to reorganize, and then maybe you start a project and you don't finish it. It's not wrong what you start at that point, but if you change a certain way of how you do a procedure, and that comes back to, again, like this room has a lot of stuff that I just need to organize. Like it's all here. It just came from me reorganizing other places in the house. That's why it ended up in this room. Like I just didn't have a spot for it, so I threw it here.
You imported it, maybe. You imported it from another room.
Exactly. I imported it from another room, but I didn't actually know where I needed it to go in the CRM. That was one thing. I didn't know where this stuff needed to go. So it just sort of went to its own spot and makes me look like a hoarder.
So a lot of it comes from importing from other locations, other CRMs, now it's in Redtail, integrations, or manually entered by somebody in the database. And it's not about blaming who did it or who done it, right? But it's about identifying what is dirty and how to clean it up. So one of the biggest things about a CRM versus a Rolodex or a Redtail CRM, I should say, is that every entity that comes in contact with your business gets their own contact record. So the most important person, of course, to your business are your clients. Clients can have a status of client and a category of A, AA, AAA, or however you segment them.
Now, and then I just want to point out for this slide itself, like you see, we have that on the top above the line. We are referencing status. Below the line, we are referencing categories. These are two data points where you can actually control your contacts. Honestly, it's the easiest way, status and category. Most things we talk about come down to that. So I just want to point out that it says client, A, AA, AAA. These are all customizable. You might have something else there, but keep in mind, that's what we're referencing when we say client, A, AA, AAA is the status and the category.
Right. And any training always goes back to status and category, wouldn't you say, Curtis?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's even if we're talking about workflow, sometimes it comes down to like, okay, who needs to? Well, how do you have them organized? Who needs to go where? So everything can interact, but like we're saying, it all comes back down to the base structure of the CRM, which is these two fields.
Right. So who's most important to your client? Probably their spouse, right? Hopefully. And then second, who's most important to your client and their spouse? Probably their children or their dependents. The client, of course, is going to have an employer. That's going to be another contact in your database. Maybe they have a CPA. That's another person in your database. You get the point. Here's the CPA firm. And then there's just other contacts that show up in the database. Maybe you've got vendors, wholesalers, and then the dreaded not specified, which makes up a lot of contact records as well, right? So it's all about identifying who's who to your business. And then once you know who they are, you know how important it is, or you know what the standard of data is for each of those people or entities.
Definitely. And again, like you get to decide like what are your statuses, what are your categories, what's most important to you. But on top of that, you still need to like, how do you define that? Like what are those definitions going to be? Haley loves to talk about, I do myself, but Haley, in all honesty, you guys have heard me talk about my room. I am, in comparison to Haley, she is far more organized than I am, and she loves the style guide. She's the one who brought it into the training team. So I absolutely love that. Like, this is where you start, like the definitions. Anybody who comes into your database, you can say, here's what the status means. And that's important, is for everybody to actually understand what it actually means to be a lead versus a prospect, or, a client versus spouse of client, or however you want. There should be an actual definition, and everyone should understand what you've decided those are.
Exactly, right. So I love talking to offices like this, because ideal, or like usually when you're looking at this, you go, oh, we all provide financial services. All of our definitions are the same. So not true. So not true. The definition varies from office to office so greatly. An active client to one office might be that I provided a financial plan for them once 10 years ago. Or an active client to another office might be that they have insurance services, but they don't have any investment services. It can vary so widely. And some offices say, if you are married to a client of mine, then you're a client. And then other offices say, no, if you don't have any of your own assets in your own name, then you're a spouse of a client. So it's really important to give each status a definition somewhere outside the CRM, and really define what that means. And if you have to put an active client is what advisor Curtis says is an active client, that's a definition too. So it's still a definition.
And actually, you'll find as you start making and filling out a style guide, like where it is, like even just using Excel to like put the name of the status and then a definition, it helps you understand yourself, because we talk to so many people who don't know where to start with creating these lists. And as you write it out, and again, hey, active client means this, but once I get down to here and I have something else that might contradict it, then I can rewrite the different definitions. And there's some work that goes into it, but we just want to say, like, it all comes down to what you guys perceive as your actual contacts, because CRM is for contact relationship management, not just client relationship management. That gets mistaken a lot, where it's like, well, they're not a client, so they shouldn't go in my CRM, but they're a contact. If I need to know what their phone number is, where their address is, I need them in my CRM. So I have that option to contact them, even if they are my client's employer. They have their own contact record. If they are a dependent, that's what we like to say, that's a future prospect. Your client's children are future prospects. We need to get that information in there, because they have their own information. They have their own name. They have their own tax ID, date of birth, all this information that is going to be beneficial. But if you're just throwing into the CRM without actually a direction of what that means with status and category, it's going to become chaos.
I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about the data foundations. Now, we've kind of gone through status and category a little bit. We'll start on the right-hand side of this slide. The difference between status and category, because they do seem to overlap sometimes, right? I like to think of the status as your Facebook relationship status with that person. So how's that relationship going, right? We want everyone to be an active client. That's ideal, but they usually move through a cycle.
I'm going to go add, it's complicated as a status in the CRM.
That would be such a cute prospect status.
Right? It's complicated.
It's complicated. And then your category is kind of how well that relationship's going, right? So if your status is client for Redtail, our samples are AAA. They're top tier, great clients. We've seen anything from gold, silver, and bronze in the category to tinfoil.
Exactly. Like, yeah, you get to define these. We commonly use AA, AAA. And actually, we actually took this from example, like the A's actually mean different things, where they get an A for each of the options, whether we have their accounts, if they're an advocate for us, if they give us referrals, they get another A. And then also the other one is attitude. So accounts, advocate, and attitude. So they can be two of those options and they're a AA client if they're all three. Now, attitude is one of those that necessarily, it can really mean what you want it to be, but in that sense is, okay, like, was it, Haley? We always talk about, like, there's certain people that need a little more hand holding. There's always that one number on Friday afternoon that calls at 4:55 that you see that number and you're like, Oh, okay, but we need that extra little bit of, the extra little bit of help for them. That's definitely fine. These are going to be your top clients in itself. So if they get that extra A, it really is the difference there. But there's definition to those. Like, that's how we've decided those are. Maybe AA and AAA is based off of what their actual portfolio balance is. Like, you belong in these depending on, the amount of money. Because even though, you want to say we treat everybody the same way, there's a difference. We treat our AAA clients differently than we treat our AA. And that's essentially, it's a triage situation. We need to say, who do we need to focus on? Who are the most important people at that point?
I love all of that. Yeah. So where do we add the status in the category? We go to your name in the top right corner, and then to manage your account. Now you're only going to be able to change these options if you're an admin, but that's okay. If you're not an administrator, usually you won't need this access.
And honestly, if I would rather not be an administrator myself and just say, Haley, go change this for me, or Rick, go change this for me. I would like to take that off my plate. Is that possible?
No, you have to be an administrator. So
Fine.
then you're going to come into manage database lists. And really, this page is a list of all of the lists that you can add to or edit within the system. So under contacts on the right-hand side, we're going to find our statuses, and we're going to find our categories. Now, if you do find yourself in a situation that Curtis described where you have maybe active client and another status that really means the same thing, possibly, let's say personal meant the same thing, then you can just go over to delete that status. And I know that sounds terrifying, but you can just map it over to a new value. So we'd select apply to a new value, and then we'd choose active client, and it's going to merge all of them together into one list.
Yeah, this is actually probably the easiest way to clean up those database lists. If you delete one, that means that this reference, this actual status, this category, this keyword is somewhere on a contact record. And do I just want to delete it? Or do I want to exchange it for something else that's already in that list? And you'll see that does give you the option to not actually replace it. If Haley were to just uncheck that box that says apply a new value, it just means we're going to delete this status. We're not going to change it to anything else. We're just going to delete it. But that gives you the possibility of creating more dirty data. Okay, and what I mean by that is if you choose to delete a status, a category, something from a list, and it exists on a contact record, it means it like the status was there. They don't have a status, and you can no longer search for those contacts based off the status. The contacts still exist, like you can search for their name, but if we need to find out who is marked as a personal client first, then we need to run some searches to find that information. And we'll show that off in a little bit as well about how you can find specific things to clean up. But I do want to point out that when you are deleting something, especially a status or a category, make sure you're replacing it with something that is already there in the list.
So I would say this is probably the most important, and that's why we've spent so much time on it so far. Now, the second most important pieces of information on a contact record, I'm actually going to go to a contact record to demo. So the second most important piece is I'm going to go to Tim Taylor's record here, and this is the bread and butter of the CRM. It's the Rolodex information, folks. This is the second most important piece of information. If you can't contact the contacts in your database, why are they in your database? If you go to a contact record and there's a bad phone number and an old address, that's not very useful at all. So how do we organize the data over here, Curtis?
Well, I mean, honestly, you can you have the option to do custom titles. You have the option to use preferred and primary, but also you can, for old information, you can also archive certain things as well. So anytime you edit, you'll see that there's a box for is primary and is preferred. It is suggested that you have, with all the different types of communication, one for each, and that's talking about phone number, email address, even website. But the first three itself, home, the actual phone number, email address, and address, you should have a primary marked. Those are important for exporting data as well, but it also bolds the actual, where it actually says home or it says mobile. It'll bold that section so you know this is the main point of contact. That's the best way to organize and say, this is the number I should be calling. Now we also
preferred.
Yeah. So we also have preferred, which is a highlight in the second column where Haley's at, where it actually lists what the phone number is, what the email address is, what the address is. If you mark one as preferred, this is actually for all types of communication. This means that if is preferred is checked for his email address, he prefers to get an email to this email address over a phone call or over a letter sent. So you can only have one is preferred per contact record, but you can have a primary for each form of communication.
Just by looking at Tim's record, if he had multiple phone numbers, I would be able to say, if I'm going to call him, I'm going to call this number. If I'm going to email him, I'm going to email this. Same idea. If I'm going to mail him, I'm going to mail this. But if I have to contact him or get in touch with him for any reason, he prefers that I email him. And that's just very quick, draws the eye to the bolded items. And that is definitely the second most important thing. Because again, why are your contacts even in the system if we can't contact them?
Definitely. And again, this seems like real simple, basic information, but these little things help with the organization of the database.
So then what comes next? What's the next important thing? And I think the next important foundational data important item is how the contacts relate to one another. We are in a very relational industry. It's a contact relationship system. Or contact relationship management system. So the relationships matter. Your relationships with your clients matter, and then their relationships with each other or those that matter to them matter as well. So there's 3 ways to record relationships in the system, and they're each important in their own way. The first and most important, of course, is the family.
With the family section itself, a lot of the times people will get stuck on, hey, I'm related to, these two are related, they need to be in the family section. We always like to say family should be anybody dependent on the head of household. So tax definition of a family. If somebody can be claimed on my tax forms, then they belong in my family section. You know, I'm a grown child. I'm 34 years old. I guess I should stop referring to myself as a child. But I do not get claimed on anybody else's tax forms. I am actually going to be marked as the head of household. I will not be marked as a child in my parents' records, because I will not be able to have my own spouse or my own children if I am on somebody else's record in their family section. There's other ways to mark that, but for the family section in Redtail, it should be on anybody dependent on the head of household.
And then everyone else that you first for reference, or all of those other family members, go to memberships. That's just for reference. There's customizable relationship titles. You can put cousins, neighbors, friends, whatever in there. We'll give some samples in a second. And then the third one is your professional contacts. And those are more actionable. So I'm keeping these for a purpose. Memberships, I'm keeping these for reference. They're great to just view. But the professional connections, that's where I'm working with maybe some centers of influence or some key industry contacts, an attorney, a CPA maybe. And I want to see who we have in common, or maybe we have a mutual referral agreement, right, with other professionals in our community. And that's where I would use these features.
Now, keep in mind, all 3 of these options for marking a relationship between contacts has to be between 2 different contact records. You can't have just a name. It has to be a contact record that's linked to the family section of another contact. For memberships, it has to be 2 contact records linked together, and same for even professional contacts. You know, that's going to be things like attorney, CPA. You would have to create a contact record for those specific people in order to list them as a professional contact of somebody else.
So breaking down family, there's a lot to the family, but we're only going to focus on the most basic piece of the family relationship here as it relates to data cleanup, and that's the family name. That's how we address the family. Now, if we've imported your information from another system, or created families for you, or maybe moved them over from another Redtail database or whatever, then we'll have already created family names for you. And usually we default to the last name family. So it would just be the Taylor family. Now, in this case, I'm on a contact record and he doesn't have a family. Before I even can link a spouse or link a child, I have to first create a new family and decide how I'm going to address their household. And do I address them formally, or am I a little bit more casual with my communications? Totally up to your office. Whatever you do, I'd say do it consistently though.
Now, this family name can get used for actually exporting specific information. Like if you create labels or export elsewhere, we like to say, again, this is how you address the family as a whole. And whether that family is one person, or maybe it's 17 people who all live under one household, there's a difference. If we're using Tim Taylor, but I like to reference Bruce Wayne, Batman, he's the forever bachelor. If I were to send a letter that said the Wayne family to somebody like Bruce Wayne who doesn't have anyone else in his family, it's going to make him feel a little lonely. We don't want to necessarily do that, but you can label it as, Mr. Bruce Wayne, or Bruce Wayne as the family name if they are someone by themselves. If he gets a spouse, then we can add Bruce and spouse name, and it's typed out. That's the benefit of having this be a free form text box, is how do you want to address the family as a whole? Most of the time, like Haley's saying here, the Taylor family is a great way to reference the fact that Tim, Taylor, Jill, and they have 3 kids. This is how we're actually going to be addressing them.
Once we create that family name, then we can click into the family page, and then we can add Jill and the children and link them over here. So just like Curtis said, that family name is so important for being able to address the family. It's a little bit of work up front individually as contacts are entered, or maybe a little bit of cleanup for your existing contacts and clients now. But I was working with an office just over the holidays, so November and December, right? And they were sending out a holiday correspondence. She told me her boss always gave her a single 8-hour day to run their Christmas or their holiday mailings, because she had to go through and edit everybody's addresses and then everybody's letter to make sure it was addressing each one appropriately. Every year she was rewriting the names of these contacts. How about doing it one time and taking your 8-hour process to 8 clicks? And that's exactly what we did on the phone call with her. We took that 8-hour every year process into 8 clicks in the system, and it took less than 5 minutes. So that's the capability of a feature like this.
Amazing. I think like that in itself just earns you a new vacation day, right?
Right. I'm pretty sure she still told her boss it took 8 hours.
Yeah, it's 8 hours. I'll be here. Click. All right. Now, memberships in the other way. This is where you get to list every other relationship you can possibly think about. Okay, so memberships is sort of off to the side. It's not connected where the family is. It's going to be in the left navigation menu bar, but you go in there and you can say, hey, I know these 2 clients of mine are roommates, or they're brother and sister, or they're coworkers, or maybe this is a grown child and I need to link them to their parents, but they're their own head of households and I still want to link them together. So any possible relationship outside of the main tax definition of a family can go into memberships. So for instance, like keep in mind, there's 2 sides to every relationship. So with me and Haley and I, we've been working together. You said you've been with Red Tail 7 years, yeah. Right? Like I've been 8 years. So we've been working together for a long time. She is very much over me. But here's the thing. I would say, okay, Haley is my best friend, but I'm just Haley's workplace proximity associate. There's 2 different sides of that relationship.
Accurate.
Right? Agreed? Right. All right. So brother, sister, sometimes the name is the same, cousin to cousin. It goes both ways, but you actually get to define both sides of the relationship and link them together in a way where you can actually view this. Now, again, memberships are viewable. You go look at the contact and see how are they linked to everybody else. I always like to describe this like a spider web. Okay, like if there's all these different, lines connecting these different people, this is just a way for you to take a step back and look at what the spider web is and how everybody connects to each other.
My favorite membership that I saw recently was daughter-in-law and monster-in-law.
Oh,
and they have mother-in-law too, but that was the way they could tell if there was a little bit of a tense relationship between the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law. So
but one thing about those relationships, like we do not have monster-in-law as an option, an automatic option in Red Tail, but it's a customizable list. So if you are creating and setting up a membership, you don't actually have to be just stuck with what we have available. There's already a lot, but you can go in and add what you would like.
And the memberships are under more on the left-hand side of a contact record, under memberships over here on the left-hand side. And there's many other features that go with them. We're just giving you the high level of like where the correct people go during this presentation. So we definitely have a lot to cover, but there's a lot more features that go around memberships and family as well and make them a lot more useful. The third place that we put relationships is the professional contacts. So this is where I usually recommend, I know it's big in the industry, the trusted contact, and you might have one or multiple trusted contacts. This is great because you can search for anyone who has a trusted contact, and you can search for anyone who doesn't have a trusted contact. So you can meet that standard and make sure everyone has one.
So great. Now, again, like this is also, you have to be a contact record in order to be linked to someone. Now, this again is saying, I'm looking at Tim Taylor, and I'm going to link his CPA, his attorney. I'm going to link his professional contacts. So these aren't necessarily your own professional contacts. These are the professional contacts that are linked to your client or to whoever that you are wanting to set up. So in here, Haley went into the Know Your Client section and then went to the professional section. And that's where you can actually view and then manage what those professional contacts are. So she typed in, we got Wilson Jr., and he's going to be the power of attorney. Perfect. You can add that professional contact and you'll see it links them right there. Now, the difference between like Haley was saying, memberships and professional contacts here is professional contacts are searchable. If I want to say, okay, we have Harvey Dent is the attorney for Tim Taylor, we actually have the ability to say, show me every single contact record who has Harvey Dent as a professional contact. So I can see here's everybody who is working with this attorney. So it's a great way to sort of have a quick access to, I'm sending something to this attorney, I need to see other people just so I know and understand the information of how my data is working together.
So that wraps up our portion on relationships. Those are some of the pieces of information that usually need to be filled out or updated individually, usually with status, category, phone number, email address, family memberships, and professional contacts. Usually you're updating that on an individual basis or one by one. However, those first two, status and category, also have a bulk method.
Yes, bulk changes. This is where we're going to dive into like how can we actually make those changes. Now, I mean, it is possible to actually, export to Excel and go through the different cells and look at the data and, change that information if you need to. But honestly, there's a lot of times where that information can be changed much faster within the CRM itself. And I understand a lot of people, it's a comfort to fall back into Excel. Personally, like I do not use Excel that much. Haley, you're much more advanced on Excel. And I understand a lot of people are. They're very comfortable with the program, but sometimes it's just easier to make the changes in Redtail. So in this case, the first suggestion for a bulk clean or for a cleanup method is the bulk changes. We're going to start with an advanced search. Then we have the ability to select all or even multiple and then make those changes. Okay, so from our search page, we're going to be using a button called Contact Options, and that's going to tell us what we can do. So Haley, if you're clicking on Contacts on the left-hand side, then up at the top, make sure you're selected on Advanced Search. Once you're here, you actually can build out, so your parameters. What contacts am I looking for based off of the data I have? In this case, Haley, I want to find anybody who is an active client but doesn't have a category. Should we start there and see if we can make those changes? So yeah. We're going to start with the type of contact. The type most commonly used, contact is the one. So I'm looking on the contact record, and then I can say for what specific field. That's what the next column is going to be. So in the contact record, I'm specifically looking for the field of status. And then the operand is going to tell the search how to work. So in this case, I can say equal to. Most commonly, it is going to be equal to. I'm looking for a contact or all contacts that have a status of active client. Once I choose that, I could just hit run, but just in case, I want to narrow it down to make sure all of my active clients have a category as well. So I'm going to hit and And now I have another line, another layer. We're going to start with contact again, because this time we're going to go to contact category. And right here on the operand, you can just choose is empty.
Oh, right. I went on autopilot, sorry.
You do not have to choose a value when you use is empty. And right away, we got 26 contact records who are marked as active clients, but don't have a category. That's dirty data right there. They're marked as an active client, but I did not put them in either A, AA, or AAA. So this is a great place to start with people missing a category. And most importantly, my active clients missing a category. Now, if you can actually run a quick scan, you can select all. Haley, just go ahead and choose maybe 5 or 6. Say, hey, I know these people should really be marked as AAA. You can go through and mark whichever specific ones from the list you want. Then in the top right-hand corner, you can choose contact options. And then the very last item will say bulk actions. And you're going to get a very long list of things you can do in bulk. Now, we are specifically talking about cleanup here. We are going to make a change. So in the middle of it, you'll see I can change contact category. I can change status. I can change source. There's all these changes I can do. So again, to repeat that, anytime you want to say, I need to make a change with a group of contacts based off of something like status, things like that, you want to run a search. Once they're on the search page, you then have the ability to come in here and say, change contact category. And I'm going to specifically change them to AAA.
Oh, we're going with triple. Okay.
Oh, triple. Oh, or single A, which any one of those. Any one of those. So once you select. All right, we're going to select them. And that then changed the data for them in bulk. Now, again, I could have selected all. I want to put them all as AAA. But the most important thing was I decided that it was important to me to find my active clients missing a category. Now, I also might have status of prospects missing a category. I might have status of, spouse of clients that are missing a category. There's a lot of different things that I want to maybe change. But again, focus first on what is most important to you. In this case, it was active clients who were missing a category, and that allowed me to make the change.
So we're going to take, excuse me, we're going to take that same scenario and we're going to go through another cleanup method. So that was Curtis's favorite cleanup method. This next one is my favorite cleanup method. And that's because it's, well, I'll explain, but it's a little more individual. So sometimes when I'm looking at contacts in the search page, and I get this all the time when I'm on trainings with clients, when we're looking at a list together, the client will say to me, well, who are these people? And I'm sitting there going, I don't know who these people are. They're in your database. So sometimes we need to dig in a little bit more on an individual basis to figure out who they are to the business and what category they should have. So we're going to run the same search in the advanced search, and then we're going to save it as a quick list. And a quick list is a saved search. So that's something I can consistently go back to, and it will populate whoever currently meets that search criteria.
It's a dynamic list, so it's dynamic. It is based off of the information that's in the contacts themselves. So if your quick list is based off of a contact having the status of active client, if you change that status for them, they fall off of the quick list. So it's all about just the most accurate search at that time, every time you run that list. I absolutely love quick lists.
And then I'm going to show you my favorite buttons that only appear in the specific scenario. And these are the previous, the next, and the return to search. So we're going to go ahead and go back into the system, and we're going to run that same search. So we're looking for contacts with a status equal to active client. And so we're narrowing that search to contacts that have a category equal, or sorry, I did it again. I'm on autopilot, is empty. And we're going to run. So this time I'm getting 19 records. We bulk changed it for 7 of the records. I think I did math right.
Yes.
And then we're going to save this as a quick list. And I do always recommend giving it a name that tells you exactly what it is and then a description.
There we go. Now, a lot of times, like she said, you want to name this. We know this is going to be clients with no category. I mean, I've seen people name their quick list even with their own name. So if you're creating a bunch for you, put your name in front of it if you want, or maybe your department name in front of it. This list, that every time you create a quick list, it is going to be available for everyone in your database to see the same quick list and run those searches. So if you are making something very specific, make sure the name reflects what it's for. So again, even if it is just active clients, that's great. But if you're narrowing it down to a specific servicing advisor, or like a specific category, add that name into the actual name of the quick list. I like how, Haley, you're even going in here and adding in what the different things mean for assets and advocate, and attitude. Love it.
Then we're going to save that list. And then what we're going to do is, I have no idea who Mira Curry is or where she came from. It's probably some movie character that Rick put in here. So I'm going to click into Mira, and this is my absolute favorite part. So if you have a long list, a short list, whatever, turn on some music, get some good headphones, make a good cup of coffee, and go individually through these records and just knock out that cleanup. So maybe you have paper files that houses the information that's missing, or maybe you need to do a little investigative work and look at when the contact was created, who added them, and maybe what the most recent notes are to determine who exactly she is. Maybe she's no longer a client and she's actually inactive at this point. Then I would edit that information, go to inactive client, update those contact details, and then I can just go to the next record that came up in that original search.
Now again, those buttons that Haley is clicking on only appear in a contact record if you run a search and then click on one of those contact records from the list. If you just search for a contact and click on their name, you will not see these buttons. This is specifically saying we ran a search, we pulled a list, clicked on it, and I can actually go to the next contact in the list down the line. So like Haley's saying, you can make those changes little by little, do a little investigative work, make those changes, then move on to the next one. In this case, maybe it's important to make sure that they either get moved off of an active client or we add a category to them and then go to the next one. So really, this is where you can be more specific. It's like I'm not taking a step back anymore. I am really narrowing down to this specific part of the data. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm going to work on.
So I've gotten partially through this list, and maybe I have to move on to something else. So I go to my calendar, I schedule an activity with a client, or something distracts me, right, from my list. Then I can always pull up that updated quick list by going to the little person in the top right-hand corner, my quick list, and then I can find that clients with no category list. It's going to advanced search through everything. And now I only have 15 records because I cleaned up 4 of them.
Love that. Love that. So there's really like a lot of simple things you can do that make big changes to your data to make sure you can narrow down on that cleanup itself.
So where do we go from here? What's next? What's our call to action at the end of cleanup? Be patient with yourselves. Rome wasn't built in a day, and a clean database isn't either. So you're really going to pick, I think we said it at the beginning, digestible chunks, and you're going to start with the essentials. We at Redtail think the essentials are status and category. And then once you have those hammered out, then you can start with all of those that have a status of client and make sure they have tax ID number, date of birth, source, and maybe 10 other key pieces of information you want your clients to have.
Awesome. All right. Another thing that we can suggest is, you didn't say, no, the workflow itself. Now, workflows is something we're going to get into after our break that we're coming into just a moment here, but you can create an actual workflow of what your process is going to be. And if you're like, hey, I don't know what a workflow is, don't worry. We're going to be going over that a little more in depth, but having a structure to what your cleanup is going to look like is definitely a great way to start. All right. Well, go ahead. I was going to say, we're right at the time. Do you want to make a few more points here, or do we want to?
I think we can go to our break. Basically, the overarching goal here, right, is just start with what's essential, digestible chunks, and then building an overall audit process going forward, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about next.
All right, perfect. All right, guys. Well, that is just our first section of the day. We have 2 more sections coming up. We are going to be, Malcolm just flew across Haley's screen there, but we are going to be taking a 10-minute break. Okay, so the trainers we're all going to be on, still online. Our cameras are going to be on. We're not going to necessarily be talking or teaching anything during the next 10 minutes. This is really a time for you to get a drink, get a snack, come back and rejoin us at the top of the hour. So whatever time zone you are in, we are starting at the top of the hour for our next session. The 4 of us, including Rick as well, might be just doing a little chit chat amongst each other. We might be throwing some questions, some fun questions to talk about. Again, this is just a break time for us to relax from the learning and then dive back into the other topics later.
Right. If you need to get up and stretch even too, I know sometimes if you're like me, I like to stand half the day. And so sitting might be a really weird concept for 3 hours straight. So by all means, use this time, get up, walk around, do jump jacks, whatever you do. Live your best life.
Jumping jacks.
Who knows? You know what's actually kind of funny is I have little lightweights that you can use like arms, and every now and then, just to get blood flowing again, I'll just kind of curl those for a little bit. And then it's just one of those soothing, just mindless things that I do in the halfway through the day.
All right.
I know. Fun fact about me today, apparently.
Oh, Haley had to step away for a second. It seems like our CEO has walked into the room and is probably tormenting her dog Malcolm.
Probably.
So not tormenting. We do not torment dogs. We do love dogs.
So before we get too deep into any shenanigans, I wanna say hi to everybody on the webinar. Thank you. We hit over 1,000, which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because that means I'm answering questions from 1,000 people. So I want to say from me to you, showing you my face, my beautiful face, ready for the training, that I am answering them as quickly as possible. I promise you I will answer every single one of them. I also want to give a shout out to Catherine for helping me out because I saw her in the chat. If you do have questions, do me a favor, throw them in the Q&A so that I can get to them. The chat is just going to keep going and I might not see them, but if you throw them into the Q&A, then that means I'll get an opportunity to actually go through the line and answer those questions for you. So
now,
keep that in mind when you're answering or asking questions.
This is for the 1,000 people who are on the Zoom webinar. Unfortunately, yes, because Zoom caps us at 1,000, we didn't want to limit. There are people who are on YouTube Live watching us right now as well. Unfortunately, you guys do not have access to those tools of the Q&A and to the chat. But if you are on the Zoom webinar, not the YouTube Live section, you do have the ability to ask those questions still. All righty.
I'm going to disappear again.
So Rick, you'll appreciate this though. In the chat really fast, says, is Ricky getting a constant supply of Red Bull? If the answer is not currently, it should be.
I got a constant supply of Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'. Ricky Redtail currently also runs on Dunkin'.
I've only had 1 cup of coffee today, and I should have made a second. I think I'm going to get through though. It's definitely going to be fine. I was telling the team earlier, those listening, I just got a Chemex coffee maker for pour over, and it's changed my life. It's absolutely amazing. So I suggest that, highly suggest a Chemex coffee pour over system. Do it.
Is that the one that kind of looks like a pitcher, for lack of a better word?
Oh yeah, it's like a glass pitcher, and it has the cone and pour the ground. You measure the grounds out, you heat up the water, then you heat the grounds, and then you pour the water. It's a process. The process that I am very thankful that somebody else does for me.
I am not as efficient. It's a hardcore Keurig. I pop in the pod, close, push button, done.
Oh, someone just said Aeropress versus Chemex. I've never used an Aeropress. I think that's one of the ones where it's like the the Flintstones push pops. But it's like that, it's a French press where you push it.
Yeah.
I think that's what that is. That sounds like it might be too complicated for me.
But I wonder how amazing it is. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, how good is that coffee?
Is like an AeroPress like, here's how you can quickly get like espresso? Is that the situation?
I have no idea.
Who knows? Who knows?
I do have to appreciate. So if I apologize if I say your name incorrectly, it says to seek, brought a fully automatic espresso machine. That was in English, reverse automatic espresso machine at the
Espresso.
start of COVID. And it's been life-changing. I 100% could agree with that. Oh, see, now it's, okay, we've got a fight going on now.
We got a duel going on, Aeropress versus not Aeropress.
But someone's saying AeroPress is overrated. Okay. All right.
Ooh.
I've seen them in the stores, and I'm just like, I don't know. The Chemex is great because like you can there's two people in this household, and we bought the 10 cup one because that's really just 3 cups of coffee.
There's someone on this call who's probably like, I can't stand coffee. They're probably like, oh my, no, just cringing inside.
Okay, well, tea maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't think tea would work in a Chemex or an AeroPress. I don't think that's how it works. It's very much a take your time sort of beverage.
I'm like, I have no idea. Although there was like, I really tried giving up coffee like at the start of the new year. And all of our New Year's resolutions, I was like, I'll drink more tea. It's supposed to be better for you. I think I lasted 3 weeks before I was like, I'm sick of this. But like, if anyone has any recommendations out there, love to hear them.
I'm worried like an AeroPress or any other kind of coffee device is going to get used like once or twice, then end up in this like hoarding room that I'm in. That's how it works. Like, it's like, okay.
I'm just going to call that room of your house the museum.
The museum?
The museum has where just anything randomly ends up.
Oh my goodness. Let me see if I can. I might be brave here. Let me take a photo real fast. All right.
I love it. So it says, and we broke even with eliminating Starbucks.
Okay. God. I am not leaving this up for a very long time, but this is what the room looks like in my view. You can even see like an old RTU book that's just sitting over there. That's from like 3 seasons ago too. I didn't lie.
I'm still gonna call it, we'll just call it the chaotic museum.
But look at this, like this blank wall. You'll never know.
Curtis, are you also wearing sweatpants today?
Not sweatpants, but Adidas track pants.
I'm gonna write this down. Someone recommended organic jasmine green tea. You bet I'm literally writing this down.
I like this. Carmen just said, COVID has been hard on you, Curtis. I wish I could blame COVID for this.
I mean, you could have. No one would have known. No one would have known.
I can't. I mean, no, it's like, I can't lie. That's not. She says, go with it. Yes. You know what? It has put me in a mood where COVID has done this to me.
So Gretchen did ask, doesn't that stress you out to work in that environment?
Yes, but like also I'm very good with disassociating things from my life. So like I don't really look past my monitors. I got, monitors up on here, just block it from view. As soon as the workday is over, I'm out that door. Like it's done.
You just literally shut the door on the day.
Yes, exactly. It's I close it. That door doesn't get open till 7 a.m. the next day. Or unless I need to store things as well.
Yes. Emma said out of sight, out of mind. 100%.
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, look at this. Melissa has all the things. French press, pour over, an espresso, 14-cup coffee maker. Ooh, cold brew coffee maker. You know what? On the cold brew coffee maker, I have a bottle that does that. You throw the grounds in, you screw it, fill it with water, throw it in the fridge. That's honestly how I survive like during the summer. It's just cold brew coffee. I love that. Then a mug with a tea strainer built in. And Catherine, you said you're the tea person, right?
I tried to be. I still will. Like I found some green tea that I liked. It had like a hint of vanilla, which was one of those like, ooh, this is new. But then when you drink it every single day straight, I kind of got sick of it. I just need mix up, I think. But any kind of like high quality loose tea, I'm all for it.
Now,
So
before
I
we
need
end
to
this
know where
break
we
time,
get this mug
before
from.
we end the break time here, Austin, you haven't told us your caffeine of choice yet, have you?
I actually don't drink caffeine. I try to avoid it as much as possible.
Oh,
So that way when I do need it, it's like ultra effective. So I don't like have a daily routine with caffeine, whether that's tea or coffee. But like sometimes if I have to like get up earlier than normal, I'll just drink like black Folgers coffee, and that's good enough for me.
You know, I'm proud of you
That is
for that.
part of me.
When I was younger, like early 20s, I used to be so reliant on caffeine. I had to break myself off from it to get to the point where you are. And now I'm back on it. But like it used to be a time where I could not fall asleep without caffeine because it gave me a headache if I didn't have it. Like horrible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm proud of you for staying away from that. Good for you.
Well, I actually just never started, so
Oh.
that helped too.
Well, my great grandma started giving me coffee when I was 5 years old. I'm not even kidding. Breakfast every morning with a cup of coffee. Stories from Curtis. All right.
That was a champ there.
Top of the hour. We are going to get started back in here. We're just a minute or two over, but we're going to say bye to Austin. And Haley had already left us, but Catherine and I are going to hang out here. We are going to be talking about, actually, what I'm really excited about is workflows. Let me get the right thing here. Workflows. So today we have split workflows into two sections. Now, again, we're going to be talking about, in this first section, workflows strictly about building them. We're not going to really be going, we'll briefly touch on it, but we're not going to be teaching how to actually run through a workflow in the system in this section. Okay, so we are just going to be strictly talking about how you start the process of building your workflows. What's the mindset you need? What is that base structure? All right, so Catherine, how do you feel about workflows?
I love workflows, actually. It's one of those very popular topics we get for our one-on-one trainings. And we didn't do it in the Victory of a Virtual World in the fall. And it was almost like I lost a child there because we bring it up so much. And so when we did, I'm like, we got to bring it back. It's like bringing that long lost cousin home. Like, come on in, come back.
Workflows are great. They're in what is a workflow? I mean, honestly, we might have people on saying, okay, well, what's a workflow? Even though there's so many different industries that use this term, I mean, we use it, really say it's a process. A workflow in Redtail is you can create a template of a repeatable process. So anytime you do something over and over again in the exact same way, you can create it as a process, whether that's something like onboarding, prospecting, client reviews, client meetings, account openings, beneficiary changes. There's a certain structure to what you do and an order to how you do it to make sure that that process happens the same way every single time. Now, again, this is just, you get to create the base. We're going to talk about how you can make changes to them throughout. But again, you want to create a structure for what is your workflow process. Why should you use workflows? Catherine, what's the most important thing? Why should you use them?
So a couple of things that workflows really help with. The first is that consistency. We always hear from these offices, well, we always want to do it this way, but it never fails. We let this fall through the crack. Or, hey, I'm thinking of onboarding a new employee in the office who they're going to be really new to this. So they have to go through that whole learning through the process. And a workflow can kind of help fill in those blanks and stop it so we're not sitting there going, well, now what do I do? Well, now what do I do? Workflows can kind of answer that for you because, again, it's that whole process that we work through. The other benefit of it is it helps keep us organized. I know, unlike Curtis's office there, we want to have organization in our life, right? We want to be able to go and say, hey, here's where I'm going to go next. Here's where I went previously. We want that track record. We want that history with it. So workflows really will be that kind of guide, I should say, in the CRM to help us really say, here's what we're doing, here's what we've done, here's what we still have left to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where do we begin? I mean, there's a lot of places. I mean, sometimes like I want to point out that there are partners that work with Redtail, different broker dealers who create workflows that can be input into your database. Okay, so you can have somebody else, a consultant, somebody might create these for you. You might already have them built out. A lot of people use Excel templates as their workflow process, but that can easily be put into the system so that way you don't have to go to multiple locations. But starting to build a workflow is, we always want to talk about whiteboarding. You always want to start with whiteboarding your process. Okay, if you don't start there, then you don't know what the process is going to look like. So there's a few different terms that we want to explain first before we jump into actually building out a workflow. And so you'll see we're going to talk about steps and tasks, outcomes, target dates. These are all terms that are Redtail specific, and they mean certain things. And this is, in order to build a template, you actually need to understand and set what these, the definitions of, or actually the names of your tasks, the names of your steps. What is it going to be? So breaking them down, I'm going to start with steps. The first column here, steps are high level. It's one at a time. When you're actually working on a workflow, it's one step at a time. I'm going to do step 1, then I'm going to do step 2, then I'm going to do step 3. You get to create however many steps that are in your process for your specific process. Again, one person's client onboarding is going to be probably different than another office's client onboarding. So one might have 2 steps, one might have 72 steps. It's really up to you. I mean, I don't think I'd ever want to see a 72 step workflow. That's a lot. But also, steps answer the question, where are we at with? If you ever say, hey, where are we at with Tim's onboarding? Where are we at with Jill's beneficiary change? A workflow, when you're actually going through it, can actually tell you, this is where you're at. You're on the you're on the, I don't know, interaction phase 1. Like, we're actually gonna be building out a prospecting workflow today and with different interactions, but you can say, we are on the prep stage for a meeting. We're on the follow-up stage. It's telling you what part of the process you're at. So again, steps are high level. Catherine, let's talk about little tasks.
Now, tasks are where we actually get specific. So this is where we're actually telling us to do something. So if you find yourself saying, hey, I need my assistant to run this report, file this paperwork, verify this account has been opened, send off that paperwork, call the client, confirm the meeting is still on, send the Zoom link. So anytime you find yourself either saying someone else has to do it or even yourself to do it, that is a task. So think of those action items. I always like to say it starts with a verb where it's telling me to physically do something. That is a task. Now, a task, the bare minimum, and this is kind of a heads up here, the bare minimum is one task. So as long as you're telling yourself to do at least one thing, that's the bare minimum. Now, with tasks is where you're also going to assign who's supposed to do it. So again, if you find yourself saying, that should be my assistant's job, that should be my job, that should be something either one of us could do, that's going to be done on the task level. Now, we will go into more specifics when it talks about the users, teams, roles, and creating users, because roles and creating users specifically can get very confusing at times, but try not to overthink them. They're usually pretty literal in this sense, but it does, again, answer what are we doing and who's doing it.
Awesome. Now, and again, the tasks relate to the steps because the tasks are the action item that complete the step. So there is no actual, like, I can't just complete a step. Like, the action item is not in the step level. That's telling you where you are. The task is telling you what you need to do. So again, once the tasks underneath the step are complete, then you can move on to the next step. Now, those 2 terms are probably the most important, steps and tasks. We also have outcomes. Outcomes can control the direction. So even though in a perfect world, I want to go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then complete it, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes I need to go back a step. Maybe I need to skip a step. You actually can create outcomes, and these are completely customizable by you, that say, when I finish step 1, what step do I go to next? So if I complete step 1, I can have, maybe depending on the account you're opening, it's going to go to either step 2, step 3, or step 4, which can all have their own different tasks. There's different ways you can control the direction. Or if I'm on step 3 and I realize that, hey, we need to repeat step 2, you can have an outcome that pushes you back. Okay, so again, the tasks complete the steps and the outcomes control which step we go to next, whether it's forward, whether it's backward, or whether it's even repeating the step we're on. Okay,
There's
so
actually even one more case scenario. What if you need to complete early? Sometimes life isn't as kind to us as we'd love to see that happen. And sometimes you just have to get out of the situation. You obviously don't want to just keep completing forward until you get to the last one and go, oh, just kidding. We should have ended this back on step 2. You can have an outcome to complete it early.
absolutely, because even like workflows are telling you it's about history as well. Not only is it telling me what I need to do, it's going to be historical reference to, well, what happened during their client onboarding? Oh, well, we can see we got halfway through, then had to complete because they canceled. So like you can actually create those outcomes to stop your workflow at any point, because sometimes you just cannot complete the process and you need to notate why. And also, the outcomes, that word notate, give you the ability to notate why you're going from one step to another. Okay, if we're skipping step 2 and skipping step 3, why? You can actually make a note during the selection of an outcome. Now, one of my favorite ways to describe workflows is actually, we're going to talk a little bit about grocery lists. All right, making lists. All right, so we're going to step away from like talking financial terms or financial processes, and we're just going to talk about groceries. This is actually very close to a grocery list that is very common on a that I have. So what I do first in the whiteboarding process of going to the grocery stores, I make a list. I got to get drinks. I got to get the bacon. I got to get cheese. I got to get wine to get through the pandemic. There's very specific things. I got to list those out. Okay. I make a list. These are those tasks. These are the things that I need to do. I need to get the bacon. I need to get the beets, all these different specific things. Then I also have the stores. Well, what stores am I going to? Those are like the steps, because physically, if I'm at grocery outlet, I cannot be picking something up from Safeway or Bevmo. Okay, I can only be in one store at one time. So let's say, for instance, that Catherine, you and I are going grocery shopping together. Okay.
By this list, we're almost making a weird charcuterie board.
Oh, close.
So we're very close.
Yeah, this is multiple meals, like additions, adding to leftovers. It's just a continuing thing, but it is very much a real grocery list.
Yep.
All right. So in this case, I get those. I only get certain items at certain stores. Okay. I go to grocery outlet. It gets talked down about. If you don't have grocery outlet in your area, it's fantastic, because, and here's the thing, you can never rely on anything that grocery outlet has. They do have a few staples that they always do, but they are constantly changing what they have. But it's always really cheap and it's good price. I normally wouldn't like buy the chicken from there. I'm not going to get into that, but definitely go like drinks, everything from grocery outlet. And then I go to Safeway for the stuff I couldn't get at grocery outlet. Okay. So that's why I can only go to grocery outlet or Safeway. They have different things. Okay. So I'm going to move in. After this point, once you make your list and what the possible steps are, start filling out the tasks in the steps they belong. So I have 3 steps here. And they're named. We have a grocery outlet step, we have a Bevmo step, and we have a Safeway step. Okay. Now I go grocery outlet to Bevmo to Safeway mainly because I can actually, it's the driving direction. Like that's just how they work. Like I have a certain process. Okay. I go to grocery outlet first. It's the first store on the right. Then I go around the corner to Bevmo. Then I go a little further down to Safeway. That's my process. Again, I can only be at one store at any given time. Catherine and I, let's head to grocery outlet first. I got to get sodas. I got to get the chicken value pack. I just said don't buy the chicken, but sometimes the value pack is worth it. Bacon, eggs. Now, also on here, this is where it's kind of important. The best thing about grocery outlet, in all honesty, is their wine selection. It's different in every one, but the wine is so cheap. Like you can get a $25 bottle of wine for $3.99, and it's really what has saved me over these past 14 months. It's so cheap to get the wine, and sometimes it's really good wine. Again, inconsistent, but it's there. Now, one of those tasks, and now Catherine, you said this, they should all start with a verb. That's the only one that I actually have starting with a verb, but what I need to do is I need to check for the wine, because I don't always get the wine at grocery outlet. Sometimes they don't have something I like. Maybe it's not good wine, But I always want to check there first before actually going to BevMo, because if I can find the wine at grocery outlet, then I'm not going to go to BevMo. BevMo is my second option. I only go there if I can't find the wine at grocery outlet, because BevMo has their 5-cent wine sale, buy one bottle, get another for 5 cents. Also fantastic. All right, that's the next best option for me. So the outcomes, once you split them up, because again, when I get the go to grocery outlet, my task can be done in any order. I don't have to pick up the eggs before the milk or the milk before the eggs. It doesn't matter. What matters is I do all of those tasks in any order before I can move to the next step.
Exactly.
Okay.
Actually, to kind of rephrase that, if we're shopping together, we might divide and conquer this list. He might take the first 4 things. I might take the last 4. The ultimate goal, we complete them all before we maybe make a trip to BevMo.
Exactly. And we don't always go to BevMo. That's an optional step. Even though it's step 2, if I already got the wine and grocery outlet, I'm not going to walk into. It has happened before. Okay, it has happened before. But most of the time, I'm not going to go to BevMo after that. Okay, I just want to go to Safeway. But if my workflow process says you have to go to BevMo, no matter what, you have to go to step 2, that's wasting my time. Okay, I already got the wine at grocery outlet. I don't need to get it at BevMo. I want to move on to Safeway, which actually technically is the third wine option. Like if I can't get it either, I'll normally just go the La Ville Ferme for $6.99, the rosé at Safeway. It's okay. It's not the best. All right.
Wine tips from Curtis.
A lot of time in the house.
Pandemic, got it.
I spend more times at grocery stores than anywhere else right now. So outcomes. Let's throw these in. I have possible outcomes. The outcomes are customizable. You get to create it. So if I'm at grocery outlet, depending on what happened during that step, and in this case, if they had the wine, I got the wine, and then outcome 1 pushes me to step 3 over to Safeway. If they don't have the wine I'm looking for, I can still say I checked for the wine. I complete that task. But when all the tasks are completed for that actual process, I can choose outcome number 2. And that says, cool, go to BevMo now. If I skip over step 2 completely, the workflow is actually going to tell me it's been skipped by outcome. So you know that I never actually went to that step, and there's a reason for it because an outcome skipped it. I don't need to. Now, you can also say that, hey, like I go to BevMo, I look at the wine, their 5-cent wine sale is over. You know, it's like, oh no, now I don't have the wine. You could go to Safeway. You can also create an outcome that maybe pushes you back to grocery outlet to say, I'm going to settle for the cheaper wine that I really don't like because I didn't have the 5-cent wine sale. So you see, there is a lot of thought that went behind my grocery list, way more thought than it probably should, but you should be putting the same kind of thought and ideas towards your processes for your actual clients. Okay, so I do want to point that out is you put the thought in what is the possible thing that can take us off from step 1 to step 2? Is step 2 always needed? Do I need to push forward to step 3? All right, let's talk a little bit about, actually, no, before we actually do that, let's dive into the CRM. I do want to show something. Let's talk about that outcome so I can actually show you what we just essentially did. Now with this, if I come over to workflows on the left-hand side, again, we're not going to dive into really running a workflow. I just want to show off what that outcome does is when I go into and I have my grocery store list right here, I have that, my different check items. I can actually come over here. I can complete the individual tasks. You know, don't have to do them in a certain order, but once I can complete all, I'm going to actually just hit complete step, which marks all the tasks as completed. It's going to say, here's your possible outcomes. Outcome 1 is I completed it. I found wine at grocery outlet, go to Safeway. Outcome 2 is I completed, no good wine at grocery outlet, go to BevMo. So if I choose that, I hit complete step. You'll see it takes me to step 2. Now I got to get the wine. 5-cent wine sale is over. You know what? I got to go back to grocery outlet. I'm going to settle. I can complete that task. And I also have an option right here. 5-cent wine sale over. Go back to grocery outlet. Or maybe I did get the wine, take me to Safeway. So you can really see how you build out these outcomes is what's going to control the direction. So if I do need to go back, I have that option. I complete the step. It controls the process and I go through all of that. Now, this grocery list, all these stores I go to all in the same day. I don't really have to worry about due dates. But a lot of the times you're going to be needing due dates for your processes because these are things that go over time. It's not just, all in one day. A process might be all in one day, but a lot of the times, if it's maybe for a meeting or a prospecting cadence, it's happening over a certain amount of time. Catherine, do you want to jump in and talk a little bit about the target date for us?
Yes, but actually I want to give one more little tip. Can you go back to the CRM really quick?
Oh, yes, of course.
Only because when we actually completed that step and we got that outcome, that's actually where Curtis was talking about the note. So if we complete that step, and Curtis did want to let maybe me know, saying, hey, I tried my best to have an awesome party here with some great wine, but it was not a good deal. That's where you can always just let me know that. So whatever you need to put, again, maybe this is just answering that whole question for someone else down the road to say, hey, why did we do this? This is your opportunity to do that. So just wanted to point that out there because, again, that's a situation that could pop up. Now, we're going to just keep doing that one here. But while Curtis is actually putting this in here for us, we'll shift gears and talk about those target dates because they are very necessary sometimes, especially when it does involve something like a meeting. So target dates, think of those as actual due dates of when we need to do something. In that case, in the actual scenario we have, the due date for that one is the day we go shopping. So if we're saying we're going to go shopping on Friday, Friday is that due date. That's the target date. Now, not everything is just a one-step checklist. Exactly like how we said the last one, maybe we're doing it over a course of a couple days. We're gonna do grocery outlet today. We'll maybe do another day and another day. If that's the case, those are different due dates that we'll have. But in the instance of a target date that involves maybe like a meeting, that meeting might fall in the middle of the process. So for example, if we're meeting today is the 23rd, blinked for a minute there. We might have had this whole preparation, and by might, I mean we did. We had a whole preparation that we wanted to have done before today's date. So today was the date we were revolving around, but everything that we did before it had a target date before it. And then we'll have a wrap up after it where it's after this actual session. So the example we have on this page here, we have it where it's step 1 is due 3 days before the target date. If the target date is March 13th, that means step 1 has a due date of March 10th. That is where it's saying that whole before target date, on target date, after date. It's telling you when you're supposed to actually get that accomplished. So again, go for it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Now, the reason that you need to say before or after a target date is because this process, when you do a client onboarding, you don't just do it once. You do it multiple times, once for every single client that you're onboarding. And each of those clients, when you start their process, has a unique target date for their process. Okay, so hey, we're onboarding them today. We're onboarding this person next week. So there's a different target date. And because when you create the template, the step can be due before, during, or after the target date, it'll be very unique. So you know that if it's based around a meeting and the target date is the same day as a meeting, your preparation step is going to be due a certain amount of days. So you know I'm going to be ready for the actual meeting that's coming up. If I'm doing a follow-up on something, hey, it's 3 days after, a week after, that step is going to be due a certain amount of days after the target date. So you're always going to know when the follow-up needs to be done.
Exactly.
Nothing falls through the cracks.
Yep. Now, one other thing also to consider is that sometimes you might not have a need for before target date. Sometimes like an account opening, that is the target date, the account opening, and everything that's after it is after the target date. Always think about really what you're working towards or what you're working off of. That's really that target date, and everything that goes into it is either going to be before or after. Now, again, we're really mentioning this whole target date because it is a process that will repeat. It's not necessarily something where it's a one and done. That's, again, something you need to remember with workflows is you want to think about what's going into it before actually building it and then sitting there going, what am I doing? Planning as much of this as possible, those steps, those tasks, those target dates. Once you have kind of that whiteboarding phase that Curtis mentioned, that's when you could take what you've built and literally apply it into the CRM.
Absolutely. And again, the target date, it's the pivot point. Each process is going to have a target date placed in a different location. There's only one target date per process.
Yep.
Okay, so that's why every single step is going to be due based off of where that target date is. So again, if it is onboarding, your target date is day 1. Everything. Step 2 happens a day after. Step 3 happens 2 days after. Step 4 happens a month after that target date. If it's maybe an end date, it's a seminar we're doing where the target date is the very last day, well, we're going to prep a month before we're going to do this, 2 weeks before, a week before, a day before, all that from that target date. Or a combination of the two, if it's about a meeting, like Catherine was saying, like if it's the target date is the meeting, certain things happen before, certain things happen the day of, and certain things happen after. Actually, I think I should be doing it this way because it's.
I know I'm trying to figure out the order, but it's
like
it's people.
Yeah. So from left to right, I have to actually say from right to left in my hands to confuse everybody even further there. But it's really important. There's a lot. So keep in mind, you want to say, okay, what's the most important date in this process that I can base everything else off of? That's what you need to ask yourself after you separate those tasks into the steps. Well, when does this step need to be due based off of this important date? All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start building, and we're actually going to be doing this prospecting workflow. This is really set up like it's like a call cadence. Okay. So we add somebody into the database as a prospect, and then we want to make sure that we are actually calling them, sending them an email a certain amount of days after we actually add them, so we can actually reach out. And our goal for this workflow is to schedule a meeting with the client. Okay, so we add them as a prospect into our database, and we want to schedule a meeting with them so we can start them on an onboarding process. So what I want to show here is in this template, on the left-hand side, we have our steps and our tasks listed. You'll see there's 6 different steps. Now, each step has a due date based on the target date. Step 1, interaction 1 is due on the target date, so the day we start. Interaction number 2 is we're going to give it 3 days. So 3 days after the target date, then we're going to do another interaction. Then 4 days later, technically 7 days after the target date, we're going to do another interaction. Then 12 days after the target date, another interaction. Now, not every person is going to have those interactions. Okay, maybe on the first call, they schedule a meeting. That's great. If they schedule a meeting and then I continue to go to step 2 and call them again to ask them to schedule a meeting, that would be really annoying. All right. We don't want to say, hey, I know we scheduled your meeting, but we have this task and we're reaching out again. That's the outcomes. The outcomes can come into play now. So if on interaction 1, we have 3 outcomes that are possible. If it's completed, okay, you know what, reached out, they weren't interested yet, we're going to go to interaction number 2. Maybe we left a voice message, we're going to call back in a few days. If they're not interested, like they say, you know what, I'm please don't call me again, that's fine. You actually have, okay, this, if we follow the red line, comes down to the step number 5, which means they're not interested. And this tells us to update their contact category. That's referencing what Haley and I were talking about, is using a status and category structure to say, well, if they're a status of prospect, maybe they're warm or they're cold or they're lost as a category. So in this case, the workflow says, now that they're not interested, make sure and update your actual contact record so that you don't have dirty data. I know that they're a prospect, I reached out to them, and they're a lost prospect now. So you can actually put that in your workflow to keep your data accurate. Now, back up here, okay, interaction day 2, maybe I left a message again. That can actually say, okay, go to interaction number 3, go to interaction number 4. At that point, you can say, after 4 interactions, I'm just going to mark them as lost. That's how it goes. We're not going to move past it at that point. But the main goal here is to get them to step 6. They are interested in a meeting, and I'm going to schedule that meeting with them. Okay, so where once they say on interaction 3, maybe they are interested, and that's going to push me down to interaction number 6, which means I'm going to update their contact category to now they're a hot prospect. We're actually scheduling something with them. We're pushing them forward in our process, and we're also going to have a task that says schedule a meeting. Okay. The
Yeah,
task itself is just telling you what needs to happen. Go ahead, Catherine.
Now, one thing to point out here, because I know we probably have some people staring at step 5 and 6 there where it's saying no due date set. Now, this is to just help reiterate what Curtis is saying there, that at any point between basically step 1 through 4, we could have them either not interested or interested. So if you're looking at it going, I have to set a due date here, obviously that can happen at any point in time. So this is one of those situations where you do not actually have to set a due date for that particular step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to actually, we have this built on the CRM already, but I want to show you how do I actually create it in my own CRM. Okay. So we're going to actually go back over to the CRM here. Where I originally went to, where we're looking at right now, I access this by going to workflows over here. And this page shows me all of the active workflows that are currently happening. This is not the best place to start building a workflow. Okay. Even though it says workflows, if you click on it, and I have a button up here that says new workflow, that is not where we want to build templates. You can click new workflow, but all this is doing is creating a workflow, a process for a previous template that's already built out. Okay, so keep in mind, going to workflows on the left is not where you want to start building your templates. What we're going to do is we're going to go to our name in the top right-hand corner and then manage your account. Once you're on manage your account, we can come down to the manage template section. Everybody has access to manage templates. Anybody can build them. If you create a template in your database, anyone else in your database can use and view and edit that same workflow template. Okay, so there is no restrictions on changing those workflows. But the very last item down here says workflow templates. I'm going to click that. I see my list. Here's all my templates. I got a lot of, you might have nothing in here. Doesn't mean the system's broken. It just means you haven't built a workflow yet. So to build a brand new workflow, we're going to hit new in the top right-hand corner. And then you get this box where it's saying, it should say add workflow template up at the top. This is, we are creating the shell of the template. This is not creating the steps. This is not creating tasks. This is just a shell. We're going to name the workflow. We're going to decide if we want the target date to be automatically set or not. So in this case, I'm just going to call this RTU Online for now, prospecting.
And actually, while we're on the name here, I do want to say, name it obvious. Don't take it too creative here, because sometimes I'll see it where it's like workflow 1, workflow 2, which is not helpful when you actually go to apply it. And you'll see that in the next section. So name it obvious. Don't set yourself up for failure right out of the gate.
Exactly. So in this case, the name, I'm putting RTU Online because this is just for training purposes, but this is mainly about prospecting calls. We are doing prospecting calls. We're creating the template. The second option says owner. Now, we haven't really talked about assignments or things like that, but the owner of a workflow is essentially who's overseeing the process. Now, because if I assign the owner to the template, it means every time I use this template, a certain person or a certain team is going to be assigned as the owner. That does not mean that they are responsible for every single task. It just means they are responsible for overseeing this process when it's being used. In this case, maybe I'm going to assign it to a team. So I can either say user, team, role, or creating user. These last two, these are great. Role itself, this is actually dependent on who the contact is who's assigned. So anytime I start, after this workflow is built out, when I start this workflow, I can say that the owner will be whoever is assigned as the advisor, the associate advisor, or the CSA to the contact attached to the workflow. So if Tim Taylor had the advisor of Catherine, the associate advisor of Curtis, and the CSA of Ricky, if I assign this as this workflow will be assigned to the role of the advisor, and I start the prospecting call for Tim Taylor, Catherine as the advisor will be assigned to this field. She is now the owner of this workflow process. This is a great situation for offices that have multiple advisors. So you can say, I want to assign the owner to the advisor of the client just for sorting purposes. Again, it doesn't mean that the advisor isn't responsible for doing every single task. It's really just saying this belongs to Catherine's client. So it's an easy way to organize that. Or if maybe it's just, hey, it's always going to be Curtis. Curtis is in charge of our prospecting. He's across the board. It doesn't matter who the client belongs to. Curtis is in charge of prospecting. Or I can say it's the team. It's the client service team. I'm going to specifically choose them. They, as a whole, are responsible for this prospecting. So that's what the owner field is for. You also have a category field. So if you do want to categorize it, you definitely can. I can just say, okay, this is a customer service workflow. However you want. This is a customizable list from your notes and activities. You can use it with your workflow templates. Now down below, remember Catherine was talking about the target date. It's the pivot point. This section, when you're creating the shell of the workflow, says you can decide to have the target date automatically set based off the creation of the workflow. Now, this is only used where the day of you start the workflow is going to set the target date. That means if I start it today, and I always want the target date to be 3 days after the creation date, that means when I start this workflow, today is the 23rd.
The 23rd.
It means if I start this process today, the target date is going to be the 26th. All right. So 3 days after today, the 26th. Okay. If
Now,
I
I
always
do
want it
wanna-
to be today, I can say 0 days. If I start it, the creation date today, the target date is also today.
Now, Curtis, do you have to fill that section in?
No, you do not. Now, this is not necessary. In fact, everything in a workflow is optional except for the name. Everything is optional. You do not have to choose an owner. You do not have to choose a category. You do not need to choose to have the target date automatically set. It sounds scary, but sometimes there's actually situations where I do not want to set the target date because it's not based off the creation date. Normal examples for that is if it's a workflow about a meeting. Okay, I am meeting with the client and the workflow is based on that meeting day. So before, during, and after, I have a process that happens around the meeting day. I cannot guarantee that the target date is always going to be a week after I create it because it's not dependent on the creation date. It's dependent on my schedule and their schedule and what works out best and when I'm going to create that meeting. So if you ever find yourself saying, I don't know what the target date is until I actually talk to the client, leave this section blank. It is completely optional. Now, again, every single one of these fields, when you take this, you take the template and start it for a new client, you can override any of these fields. So you can say, oh, I know it normally gets assigned to the client service team, but I'm actually going to assign it to somebody else. Again, that's what we're going to be talking about, the running of it. I think, Catherine, you guys will talk about starting workflows. But again, templates in Redtail are just starting off points. Anything you fill out in the template is just a starting off point. I want it to default to this, but I have the option to change it later on. You are not set to use what you choose in the template. It's just, I mainly start it this way. Yep. I'm going to fill that out to save some time. In this case, our prospecting workflow, I know that I want the target date to be day 1. So in this case, I'm going to put 0, days, weeks, months, doesn't matter. As long as there's a 0 in one of these options selected, the day of the target date will be today. Now, this little option right here, I love. If this is based off of the target date and steps and tasks and those due dates, if you want to make sure that, hey, if 3 days after is a Saturday or a Sunday, I want it to get pushed to the Friday before, the Monday after, check this box. Nothing will be due on a weekend. It'll push it to either the Friday before or the Monday after. So I'm going to do that. And at this point, I'm going to hit create workflow template. Now, once you create the workflow template, it's just going to take you back to this page and you have to go and find that template. So I'm going to scroll down. What do I call it? RTU
Online.
Am I looking right at it?
There it is. Nope, it just popped
Oh, there
up
we go.
right there.
I am just looking at it and I can't read. So right here, RTU Online prospecting calls. That's the one we created. I'm going to click on it. Opens up to nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. All right.
Nothing.
Nothing is the best place to start from. All right. So at this point, this is all I have for my template. If I actually want to, if I click on RTU Online in red, I can see everything. Okay, here's what I just created, but there's no steps, there's no tasks. I need to start building those. But if I look over to the right, I got a button.
Push it. Buttons are supposed to be pushed.
New step buttons are supposed to be pushed. I love that. So we push the new step button and it says new step number 1. If I hit it again, we get new step number 2. So that's how you create the steps. In this case, I know that I have 6 steps. So I'm just going to hit this 6 times.
And while Curtis is hitting that 6 times, this is where you're going to start to see that whole whiteboarding process really pay off, because this is literally where we're just going to click a lot of the same buttons over and over and over and get over again. It's going to be several times. This is the part where I will be very honest. It starts to get a little tedious because it's a lot of the wash, rinse, repeat. So if you don't catch it the first time, the good news is we're going to do it another 5 times after it because we have that same 6 steps.
Absolutely. So here we added new step 6 times. New step number 1, you'll see do not set. There's no outcomes. There's no tasks. It says you have a step, but you have nothing else. That's definitely fine. Let's start by naming our step. So we're going to go to the action icon to the left of the step name and hit edit step. Once we do that, we can decide what do we want the name of the step to be, and then when is that step going to be due. So again, we're not deciding who's assigned to things yet. This is just what's the name of the step. This is what grocery store are you going to, what part of the process are you at, and when should that part be due based off of the target date, of course. So from here, new step number 1, back on our template here, we got interaction 1, interaction 2, 3. That's how we're going to name it. So I'm going to put interaction. I was typing on another screen. So let me try that again. Interaction number 1. That is going to be due the same day as the target date. So I'm going to say here, I either have after, before, or on. I say on the target date. Easy enough. Update that step. I go down to numbers 2, edit step. Same thing here. We're going to put interaction.
Number 2.
Number 2. And this is going to be due now after. Now we said this is, if we're on step 2, I want this to be 3 days after the target date. So interaction 2 will happen 3 days after the target date. And we're going to update that step. Then we're going to go down to number 4 or 3. Interaction number 3. And then this is also going to be due, but based off the target date, this one's going to be due 7 days after.
So again, just to clarify that one here is going off of basically that date from interaction number 1. So if you're questioning, well, why didn't you just put 4 days after it? If you did, it would have been literally the day after step 2. So always go off of adding this after target date based off of the actual target date from step 1. If it's easier to think of literal dates, it's like step 1 is today's date. I want to reach out to them again on Friday. I want to reach out to them again next Wednesday. Repeat, repeat. Think of it that way if you'd prefer. So again, just edit step. Put in here, this one I think is the not interested instead.
Exactly. Now this one, we're not choosing a due date. That's definitely fine. Because we don't know if it's, we might be 12 days in the process. We're just not set a due date. Due dates are optional. Essentially, if a task for a workflow to have a due date, personally, I see that as get that done. If it doesn't have a due date, that's top priority because I need it. I need a due date. I can set it for today manually if I want, but I'm just going to keep it blank. So if they're not interested, we're not doing a due date. If they are interested for step number 6, I'm going to put here, I'm just going to name this interested. Also no due date.
Excited.
Okay, so far we've named the steps and when those steps are due. Now, how do we actually complete the step is we have to create those different tasks. So interaction number 1, oh, I rolled too far. Here we go. I have another screen where I'm looking at the template, but the template we're going off of, again, it's on this screen. We have interaction 1, 2, 3, 4, then either not interested and interested. And then here we have the task. So we're going to make the prospect phone call and send an email on day 1. So now we're going to add those tasks. So we know they have 2 tasks. So if I go to the step level, I'm going to hit new task twice. For the other ones, I'm just going to hit it once. We can add a task for every single step. You have to have at least 1 task for each of your steps. If you do not have a task, then you're not telling anybody to do anything. The task is the action item. There's no task, there's nothing to do.
You'd actually get stuck once it's actually applied to a contact. You'll still see that. I don't know if you saw that in the italics there. It's like at least 1 task is required. Now, you can always have more. Definitely, you are not limited to that one. It's just the bare minimum is at least 1 task. So this, again, is where we actually assign who is going to be doing that task. So one other question we commonly get is, Can you have multiple users within that same step with those different tasks? You definitely can. If I'm supposed to do a task at the same time Curtis can do another task, you can have that all under one step. The biggest tip I can always give when it comes to where I should put those tasks, if I have to do something before I can do my current task, separate that out into a different step. So if I can't send prospecting email number 2 until prospecting email number 1 has gone out, make that under a different step. So we're just filling in again those different tasks, again, reminding us to actually do something. So send prospect email number 2, and we're just using those different assign tos. Now the assignees are actually the same options you get from the owner. So it's going to be the user, the team, the role, and creating user. Now, I don't believe we've actually gone over creating user yet, have we, Curtis?
Creating a user?
The creating user option.
Oh, we haven't. I actually love that option because a lot of times people say it's not based off of who the client belongs to. It's about maybe who took the phone call. Hey, I took the phone call. I started the process. That should be just assigned to me. So if I choose creating user as assigned to, and I'm the one who starts the process, not I'm the one who created the process, I'm the one who took a template that exists and started it, I will be assigned to this task. So it's another great tool. Again, there's different ways you can create these automatic assignments, but it really is beneficial.
Exactly. Now we did actually just get a question from Mary here where it's saying more of like a quarterly process for a workflow. Again, you're not limited to just days when it comes to these step due dates. If it is something where, hey, we repeat kind of the same tasks every maybe first week of the quarter, you can have those steps due every 3 months if you prefer. Again, really use those target dates to your advantage so that way you get it popped up when it's actually supposed to appear. So we're just going to wrap up these last few tasks. And again, bare minimum, I know I've already said it like 3 times, but bare minimum 1 task and make sure you have it assigned to. Perfect. Now, actually, I'm glad Curtis is actually typing it in here. For these descriptions, think of these as helpful reminders. This might be an actual link to something else in the CRM. It might be a link to maybe another website, or it could just be a helpful reminder to say, hey, when this happens, pick this or pick that.
Love that. And then finally, right down here, last thing we're going to do is these last 2 tasks. Now, again, you can have multiple tasks. And I like to talk, again, it's always, to me, it's easier to think about the grocery store is, doesn't matter if I change the contact category first or actually schedule the meeting. Either or, it doesn't matter what happens. The goal is I need to do both before I can move elsewhere. Category, we're going to just do this last one. And then in this case, I'm assigning it to a team. So I do like to point off, like maybe like this update, any updates to the context can always be assigned off to a different team. Maybe it's not, it's different people working together. You know, like if Catherine and I go to the grocery store together, I don't have to wait for her to pick up the milk before I can pick up the eggs. You know, it's divide and conquer. You know, always think of it like, hey, we're going to Costco at, 2 o'clock on a Sunday.
No.
The worst time to go to Costco.
Yeah, I always like to think of it as like, which it made a comeback, the supermarket sweeps. Go as fast as you can. And if you need to grab something and someone else grab first, go for it. But this, again, once we have everything filled out, this is technically a completed workflow, isn't this?
Technically, if we don't want to control the direction. So,
Exactly.
So far, we set up the steps and the tasks. If you don't create outcomes, it's not wrong. It's not always helpful, but it's not wrong. In the case, if I say, okay, this is all I need, the steps and the tasks, it means every time I use my prospecting workflow, I'm always going to do interaction 1, then interaction 2, then interaction 3, then 4. Then it's going to make me tell them they're not interested and then interested.
Yep.
Okay. This is linear. It is structured in a linear format, but does not mean that your process has to be linear. Okay. I'm only going to the interested step if they want to schedule a meeting. I'm only going to go to the not interested step if they don't ever want to hear me again. Don't talk to me, send them over there. I'm not going to reach out. I'm going to notate that stuff, but that's where we're going. All right. So I'm going to fill out a few outcomes here. We already have this built out, so I'm not going to dive fully into everything like I've been doing, but the outcomes I want to show, starting with step number 1, we're going to create the outcomes. Now over to the right, it says there's no outcomes. To add a new outcome to a step, and you should be doing this on every step. And also this is important information. When you create outcomes, you should always have an outcome that pushes you forward and an outcome that gives you an out. Remember, you can have an outcome that completes the process at any time. In this case, during interaction number 1, they might say, don't contact me, which sends me to not interested, and the process is over. Okay. So first one, I'm going to hit add outcome under the action icon. This is where I get to choose the name of the outcome. And when that outcome name is selected, which step do I go to? And also complete workflow is always one of those options. Okay. If I were to only create one outcome per step, it means I can only go in one direction. So outcomes, normally you want to have multiple. One that says go to the next step in line, one that says complete the workflow, or maybe one that skips to another step. So in this case, I'm going to say client interested. Easy enough. That's the best scenario, that I reach out once. I want to go to the interested step. So if they are interested in meeting, go to the interested. So I can actually put in meeting here.
So this one would literally bypass interaction 2, 3, 4, and the not interested step.
Perfect. So that's the best situation. Reach out, they want to do it, we go forward. Perfect. The next option is, hey, didn't get a hold, maybe a left message, reach out again. And so I'm going to add another outcome and say, reach out again. Easy enough. You can name it whatever you want. Even if you're just saying complete as the name of the outcome, that's definitely an option. Or not complete. Or go to step 2, or however you can name it, whatever you want. This is reach out again means I'm going to go to interaction number 2. Perfect. Now, if they're not interested, third outcome here, I'm going to say add outcome, not interested. Now, if they do that, I want to say not interested. That's the step we're going to. So I'm going to put in meeting here. And I'm typing out the outcome name is not interested in meeting, which is when that's selected will take me to the not interested step of the workflow. I create that. Now on this line, we have outcomes 3 now. I click on that and it says, again, this is when I complete all of the tasks for step 1. These are the 3 options I have. I can either say they were interested, I need to reach out again for some reason, or they were not interested in the meeting. Those are my 3 options. Love it. Same thing, I come down to here. Well, once I'm on step 2, my options are I can hit add outcome and I can say, well, yeah, they're interested in meeting. Love that. I don't know what I spelled interested in like there. So let me use my right click option to spell things correctly. So interested in meeting means we are going to go to the very last step. We can skip 3, 4, and 5. Perfect. Love that. Then also we're going to have reach out again. It's essentially just repeating the same things at this point. So I can say reach out again, which is then going to take me to interaction number 3. And then the third one again for interaction number 2, add outcome. We're going to say not interested. And I can say go to the not interested step. Now, again, this is that wash, rinse, wash, repeat, or wash, rinse.
Watch, rinse, repeat.
Wash, rinse, repeat. Yes, wash, rinse, repeat. It's been like 7 months since I've washed my hair.
Oh, no.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Kidding. Okay, I take very good care of this beard. All right. So those outcomes, again, you create them a lot over and over. When I come back over to the template here, you'll see these are over and over what I'm creating. All right. Now, I'm going to skip down to here so we can actually save a little bit on time as we're coming up here. Is when I'm on not interested, that's fine. I still need to create an outcome to complete this step, because if there's no outcome for this step, once I'm on step number 5, if I complete this task, it's going to push me to the interested step. Like that doesn't make sense. I need this step to end where it's at. Stop in its tracks. If I ever end up on this step, I only have one option, and that's for it to mark everything as completed. Okay, so I'm going to hit add outcome, and I'm going to say, I'm just going to actually write completed, and then say complete workflow. So as soon as I update their category, that task in the not interested step, I'm going to choose the outcome of completed, and it completes my workflow. So I can actually end the process on this step at any given time. Same thing here. I'm going to come over and add an outcome. I'm going to say same thing, completed. And I'm going to say complete workflow. So even though, like, if I end up on this step, I still have the option to complete it. So again, you want to be able to create an outcome that'll push you forward into a next possible step, whether it's the next step in line, a step further down the line. You can create multiple that goes in all different directions. Maybe there's really 3 options. I can go to this step, or this step. I have an outcome for all of them. I have an outcome that lets me complete the workflow at any time. I can even, if I'm ever on not interested and they reach out, you know what? I can say add an outcome and say, client changed mind. And then I can say, this can give me the option to send them to interested. Hey, like in the middle of me going through and updating the workflow, they called back and said, you know what? Actually, I would like to have a meeting. I can actually have an outcome that pushes me from the not interested step to the interested step. That's great. It's a possibility. Maybe it doesn't happen often, but if I build the template and it's not an option once it's live, I'm stuck. Now you can edit it a little bit later. We're not going to dive too far into that, but I do like to show you want to possibly think about all those different reasons. Again, this goes back to the amount of energy and thought that I put into my grocery shopping over the past 15 or so, however many years it's been. That's what you want to put into your process. Okay, where can I go? What's my direction? What's important? Where do I need to go? And again, what this workflow answers is the most important thing that you should have a workflow is where are we at? Where are we at with our workflows? Well, we're in step 2. We're in the interaction phase. So that's why when we come over to the workflows on the left-hand side, I can look at this page that has all these different client reviews. We have important meeting information workflows, and I can look at what current step are they on. Oh, we're gathering info. We're preparing for the meeting. We're doing certain office tasks. Like, it tells me where I'm at with every single workflow and when that workflow is due next. That's the best reason to have workflow processes, is so you don't have to go through and find the post-it notes that may have fallen behind your computer into the void of mess on the other side of my computer monitors over here. It's in the system. It's in there. I know what we're doing. Catherine,
Yes.
have workflows changed your life?
So far, but I know we have a lot of people who are sitting out there going, great, we built it. So we are going to take a quick break here. I know we've gone over time, so maybe we'll carve a little extra. I think I can.
Oh my goodness, I didn't realize. I thought we had 3 more minutes. I do apologize. That's so on me. I apologize, Scott.
That's okay. It's okay. I think Austin and I are pretty adaptable, so we can always adjust it. But I do want to give everyone a quick break because that's a lot to take in. And I know people are sitting there going, what? What? So we are going to take a quick break here. Chris, you want to get to that break slide? And then when we come back, Austin and I are actually going to take that live. We've built it. Now what? So again, use this time, get up and stretch, grab some water, use the restroom, whatever you need to do. Now's your moment. We'll chit chat again because that's just how we all are. We love to talk. But yeah, we'll be back in, we'll say just about maybe 5 minutes from now.
Like, should we do like 5 after the hour? So
yeah,
5 minutes after the hour?
5 after the hour should be good. Let me see if I can kind of take over as well.
Perfect. Haley's back. Haley, we missed you.
Hey.
Sorry about that. Brian refused to come on camera.
Oh.
Great chuckle, Austin.
I only laugh because I try to do the same thing to him too, and he's like, no.
I even was like, just step over here. No, my camera's off. Just step over here.
Oh, so Haley, you said that Brian was walking into the chill lounge there with you?
Yeah, Malcolm's here. So Malcolm.
We got Malcolm. Where's Leo? Is he not in the office today?
One dog at a time. It's all I can handle, and all Red Tail's rules allow. There you go.
I miss Malcolm. I don't think I've seen Haley in over a year now, maybe just about a year. But Haley and I our desks were actually right next to each other, which meant Malcolm got to hang out with me all the time. I think I miss him the most.
I mean, did you ever really get to hang out with Leo though?
No, I didn't. I didn't get to form a bond with Leo. I formed one with Malcolm, but not really. I'm not against Leo. I just didn't get to know him as well.
Leo's a puppy, so I don't even know if we're going to keep him until he's 3 years old.
What?
Like, no, that's like, well, sorry, that's the way, like, that's the way I say it, is like the dog becomes the dog that it's going to be when it's like 3 years old. So I just keep telling myself, get through the puppy phase. And it's mostly a joke, but maybe
I'm
not
like,
really.
wow,
But
Haley. I'm like, you are harsh.
we'll just see who he is at 3 years, and then I'll really know who he is, and I'll be like, okay, do we like you?
Can children work like that? Is that a thing with children? Like,
I don't think there's like
No.
a least option. Jeez.
Well, I don't have kids, so I don't know how to really. Actually, none of us have kids, do we?
No. No. Although I do spoil the heck out of my niece and nephew. So
Yeah, you do.
I do. It's pretty bad. I know. It's always Auntie QT. Yes. Can we do this? Of course we can. Let's go. Like, I'm not your parents. I'm not saying no.
We ran
Right.
into my nieces at Bass Pro Shops. Like, we were there and they happened to come by, which is weird because they live an hour away. And we ended up going to Walmart next door. And my sister was so mad because my niece is like, can I have this Barbie? And I'm like, yes, you can.
I have a story about so I have 7 nieces and nephews. One of my sisters has 5 kids, and at one point there were 5 kids, 9 and under. A lot happening there. And one time I was off work for a week. Like, there was no vacation, I was just off work, and my sister knew, and she called me and she's like, hey, do you want to have lunch? I was like, sure. She's like, I'll come pick you up. And so she came, picked me up for lunch. And then like she already had like the Taco Bell like pack, like where it has like the 10 tacos. She's like, oh, here. I'm like, okay. I'm like, we're just eating Taco Bell in your car as we're driving. And actually, I know I talked about grocery stores a lot, but I got my whole grocery store process from her. She goes to grocery outlet in that order. There's very specific things. She parks in the grocery parking lot, says, all right, I'll be right out. Leaves me in the van with the 5 kids. Like, that's what she picked me up, knew I was off work, so she can go grocery shopping without any kids. Didn't tell me until she actually got out of the car and went to the grocery store. But she gave me Taco Bell.
So I have to ask, she's older than you, right?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, she's 7 years older.
Yep.
So
Smart.
it's very much, she's always been in control of my life.
God, that's brilliant. Just, I'll be right back, guys.
Like it was disguised as a, hey, let's have lunch since you're off work this week.
So now you're gonna have to clarify going forward and be like, lunch or lunch?
Or am I doing you a favor? Actually, I loved it. I hanging out in a parking lot with 5 kids, just being goofy and fun. It's great. I love it. Like, whatever. I had Taco Bell. That's the easiest way to please me. Just give me Taco Bell. I'm good.
So I do have to laugh because Susan says that her kid is 35. She's tried. She can't return them. So to answer our question.
Carrie's over here singing the grocery outlet jingle. We used to call it grocery outlet, barf, and market. Actually,
it's gotten so good. Really, guys, like, check it out. Grocery outlet. It might be a regional thing. I don't really know, but
I grew up in a small town, so ours was a bit sketch.
I don't have grocery market. Yeah, we don't have that. The closest thing I think we have is like maybe a Smart and Final. That's an assume.
Well, okay, but Smart and Final is like a smaller version of a Costco specifically for restaurants.
That's
like,
literally what I'm saying. Like, this is maybe the closest. We don't apparently believe in having like outlet grocery stores here. Like,
oh.
like
No, really.
we have a lot of. I'm like, well, our Sprouts is pretty awesome. I'm like, and they actually have
Sprouts,
pretty good deals.
I love
Really?
Let's see.
I mean, yeah, like a lot of people
Here
rag
in
on
the
grocery
hall?
outlet because it looks like what they got fell off the back of a truck, and I'm pretty sure it did. But also, there's this whole with mayonnaise. There's this East Coast West Coast thing where Hellman's, same company, Hellman's is on the East Coast. Best Foods brand is on the West Coast. You cannot buy Hellman's mayonnaise in California. Can't buy Best Foods mayonnaise, but they are the same company, go through the same process, just have different labels. One time at grocery outlet, I found Hellman's mayo, which means somehow this should be on the East Coast, but it's here. Not going to question
that
it.
like what's that like Carl's Jr. and then the other
Hardee's.
and it's like
Hardee's
the
on
same
the East Coast.
thing. Yeah.
I remember, and I went to school in Los Angeles, and I've lived in Northern California my whole life. And I remember the first time I went to a Vons grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Oh, Vons.
how did they just, like, I thought, like, how could they get away with this? They're just copying Safeway. Like, how could they possibly do this. And then my friend had to explain to me that Safeway and Vons are the same thing. They just have different names. It was the whole Carl's Jr. Hardee's debacle.
Well, that's also what Bel Air, Rayleigh's, Bel Air, and Nob Hill, all the same thing.
Yeah, it's all just coastal. It really is.
This is a lot of useless information. I think we're done with our break though, so I'm gonna go to mute.
We are. So we're going to say bye to Curtis and Haley, and Austin's going to stay with me this time. And we're going to actually kind of complete that whole workflow process that we just built. So we're back from break, and we're going to talk about the implementing part. So again, before we went to break, like I said, I know some of you are probably sitting out there going, cool, we built a workflow. Now what? And we're sitting here going, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. How do I launch it? How do I actually work through it? So that's what this course is actually designed to do. It's going to actually answer that question of how do we take it live? How do we see these tasks? Where do we go to complete these tasks? So we're going to make sure we go through as much as physically possible. It is going to be more that's not English, fire hose of information regarding workflows. But again, it's more of that post template being built kind of interaction. So
I also wanted to add that in case you guys weren't following along in this section here, we're actually going to incorporate a little bit of workflows into tomorrow's session as well. So we're going to show you how to use them within a certain context, and you'll get to see them in that capacity as well.
That's actually a really good shout out because you're 100% correct. They will make an appearance tomorrow. Same with the content from the cleanup tomorrow. So everything that we've taught today, absorb it as much as possible. Don't forget it before we come back tomorrow, because it will be very useful. So let's start off with kind of that first question I feel like we always get with our one-on-one trainings, which is, where can I find my tasks? I might have that workflow, but I don't know where it disappeared to. Where do I find these? Now, my personal favorite is actually on the Today page, mostly because that's the first thing I see when I log in. So I can see workflow tasks to do in 2 spots from the Today page, and I'll make sure we hop in when we actually take it live and show it. But you can always find it from that spot. And like I said, if you have yours defaulted to the Today page, it's one of the first things you're actually going to see. Now, Austin, I think you might have a different preference. Am I right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you hit on it. You said when I log into Redtail, I go to my Today page. But for me, I prefer to go right to my calendar, and that's where I go to see my workflow task. So I have it set automatically in my preferences that my workflow tasks are going to show up on my calendar. And so there, I can see it all in line with all the tasks I have for the day, as well as my appointments and meetings.
Now there's yet another spot. So you're going to find there's multiple locations that you're going to find these tasks. And it's not necessarily to say that one spot's better than the other. It's always going to be a matter of preference, like Austin just said there. But another spot's actually going to show up on the contact record. So if you're on Tim Taylor, which we will be later, you're going to see those tasks right then and there. And it might be easier to just click and complete versus going back to the Today page or going back to the calendar to do that. Now, there's yet one more spot in the CRM, Austin. Go ahead and explain that.
Yeah, actually, Curtis hit it earlier, and it's on that left-hand menu. It's called workflows. Now, that's not where we go to build the workflows, but if we want to see our workflows that are currently in action, they're active or even completed workflows that we've done previously, we can go to that workflows tabs. Now, this tab is going to be a little bit different because it's going to show you a high level. It's going to show you all of the workflows that are currently happening in the database. And then if I want to get specific on a particular workflow, I'm going to have to click into it to view the actual tasks.
Exactly. So now that we at least know where they're at, and again, we will actually show once we've taken it live, which will be in just a moment. But another thing to keep in mind, and I know we referenced it during the last session, but it just bears repeating, you can only have one step open at a time. So it might have multiple tasks, like we set up with that first one and the last one where there's 2 tasks, but I can only complete those tasks that fall under that current open step. So if you ever find yourself saying, well, I can jump ahead and do that, I might recommend moving that task back up to that one particular open step. Mm-hmm. Now I think we've built it up, Austin. I think we've given it to them. Let's actually answer that question of, well, how in the world do I get it to actually appear in our CRM? So I think we should hop in the CRM. What do you think?
Yes.
Okay. Oops, so, maybe not. Let's get this over. There we go. Now we are.
Here we are. This feels homey. Okay. So the first thing we actually need to do before we take the workflow live is we need to set the template as active. So we're going to want to go to our name in the top right-hand corner, choose the Manage Your Account section. And then we're going to open up our workflow templates. And if you remember when Curtis was building out the workflow template, we had it set to under construction, but now we're done with the construction. The workflow is built. And so what we need to do is put it into the active status. So that way we can actually make it appear when we select our templates. So there we go. We're going to change it to active. Go ahead and scroll to the bottom and save the changes. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and start the workflow. So Catherine, why don't you go ahead and hit that plus button there at the top. We're going to go ahead and choose workflows. And then we can go ahead and select our template. So we'll find RTU Online prospecting calls and yep. I'm sorry, Catherine. I forgot. Instead of linking the contact name here and putting in the person's name, I have a kind of a shortcut for us. And that is to actually go to the contact record first, and Redtail will automatically fill in the contact name. So if we go ahead and open up Tim Taylor here.
Now, I believe we were in him earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and come up to my recently viewed. I'm going to come on down to Tim.
Yep. Now when we hit the plus button.
Okay.
Now choose workflows and go ahead and choose the template. Now we've saved ourselves some typing here because look at that. Tim's name is already filled into the contact name, and that's because we're starting the workflow from his contact record. Now, another pro tip that I'll give is we can actually edit the workflow name here as well. So if I wanted to go ahead and put in Tim's name here, so that way in the workflow title, I can see that this particular process is for Tim, I can go ahead and change the workflow name. Now, that's not going to change the title of the template. It's just going to change it for this particular instance. Now, everything else, thankfully, has already been pre-filled for me. So owner, category, target date, we're going to exclude weekends and holidays. That's all been already added for me. And that's because Curtis set that up when he built the workflow template. So now all we have to do is scroll on down to the bottom and choose to create new workflow.
Now, before I do that really quick, only because I think this is another thing we said like 800 times. What if we don't have to have this the same when it's the target date? If you click on this here, you can always adjust it. Now, this did pre-fill in based off of our template showing 0 days off from the creation date. So that's why that filled in. If you ever don't see that fill in, it's because of how we had our actual template set up. So let me go ahead and I'll create that new workflow for us.
Okay.
And
yeah, and just because it's the workflow is started doesn't mean that we can't record any adjustments if we need to. So for example, if we know that Tucker's going to be out of the office today, we can go ahead and reassign that first prospecting call to another individual in our office. Now, right, that's not going to affect the template. So going forward, we're still going to have, go ahead and change Teddy to Tucker here. So Teddy's out today. We're going to adjust it to Tucker. And we're just doing it for this particular instance because we know that Teddy's out on vacation. But when he returns, we still want him to be the one in charge of sending the prospect emails. So we're just going to reassign due in this particular instance. The same can apply for the due dates as well. Like, for example, if we know that the office is going to be closed on March 2nd for whatever reason, we can go to interaction number 3 and we can change the due dates here by editing the step and adjusting the target date. So I'm going to change this to 8 days. And that's going to push it out to March 3rd because I know that Tuesday there is going to be a busy day for me. I got lots of meetings and I want to make sure that I do my prospecting on Wednesdays. And again, this is just going to adjust it for this particular instance. It's not going to make any changes to the template. So when you use this process going forward, your changes will still be as you design them in the template.
Exactly. Now, coming back to it, one thing I do want to clarify is if you know for a fact someone is going to be out of the office, maybe for like a medical leave where it's multiple months, I might say go to the template instead and update that. So that way you don't have to change this every single time for that 3, 6, 8 month period, whatever that case is. Now, I did want to leave these as Tucker only because I'm logged in as Tucker and I wanted to show that this should actually show up on my today page. This has a target date of today. These are my tasks that are now assigned. So if I actually come over to my today page from the far left, click on that today over here, give it a second to load. It's definitely processing. But if I actually look down here, there's actually quite a few workflow tasks, but I should actually see the one prospecting calls for Tim Taylor. Those are those tasks to assign. So it is very possible if you have quite a few tasks that are assigned to you, your workflow task today could look like this. On the reverse, what if I don't get everything finished today? This is quite a bit. It's one of those Tuesdays where everything is happening all at once. And I might not get everything actually completed here. That doesn't mean that the workflow tasks will just disappear. They won't just complete on their own. They won't just go, boop, you're all done. Nope. You still have to manually complete them. However, if I come in tomorrow, these tasks will not show up over here because again, it's only for today's date. So I'm going to want to actually come up to the top and over on the far right here, almost like we're heading to our name, you're going to see an active workflow task button here. So it has almost kind of like a reverse sign in a way. But if you click on here, this is going to give you kind of a laundry list of all of your actual workflow tasks. My personal favorite thing to do is to actually click on the task due date. So that way it resorts it from the oldest to the newest. So that way, if I am behind on something like, whoops, we're quite a few days behind on this one, I can complete that first and then work my way down. Same kind of situation. If I had anything that didn't have maybe a due date, I can resort that so that way I see those first. So again, just a personal tip, but from the today page, there are those two spots, the actual workflow tasks to do today right down here, or the workflow active task over here.
Now, if that list there looks intimidating to you, I would recommend checking out the calendar view, which is what I prefer. So if we head over to the calendar, we can go ahead and see all of our activities for the day. And then if we choose the action icon here, we can choose to temporarily enable our workflow tasks. And once we do that, our workflow tasks for the week will go ahead and appear on our calendar. So there they are. There's quite a few of them today. But here I can at least see what I have today, tomorrow, maybe yesterday, or coming up in the coming weeks. Now, I did mention previously that I have it set in my preferences that I can just automatically go right to my workflow task. I don't have to do that actions. And so if I go to my name and choose preferences here, I can scroll on down to the calendar management section and choose to enable default to show workflow tasks, the one right above that. And we can change that to yes. By changing that drop down to yes, when I go to my calendar, I'll be able to see my workflow task to show up automatically. Catherine, I think we might have selected the wrong one there.
I might have now that I looked at it.
No, not the birthday one, guys. The one above that. And we'll be able to set up those workflow tasks to be able to automatically show up when I visit my calendar.
Turn the birthdays back off. There we go.
All right,
So
here we go.
as long as you pick the right things, they'll show up. But again, if coming back to what we were saying, there is maybe you don't always like to see that under your calendar. Maybe it's just, hey, I want to see it for just this couple minutes, or I just need it here just visually to take everything in. That's where that actions is. So this is more temporary, preference is permanent. It's the easiest way to always kind of differentiate those two.
So Catherine, where else can we go?
So the other spot is actually the contact record itself. So if I come on back to Tim, and I know this is kind of going a little roundabout way, but if I were to maybe log in later in the day, I can actually see the one active workflow over here. But if I scroll to the very, very bottom, maybe there we go, I can actually see those current open workflow tasks. Now, this one, unlike the today page, and pretty much actually unlike the calendar as well, this one will show if there's something else. So if I had left this for Teddy, I would still see those tasks here because it's not to say that, hey, these are your open workflow tasks. This is to say these are the open workflow tasks for Tim. Now,
all right, and then we also have the workflows tab there on the left as well. Now, again, we see the high level overview. So these are all of the workflows currently happening in the database. But if we scroll on this list, we should be able to go down to the prospecting workflows and we could see there's our workflow for Tim. Now, if I want to see more information, I'm going to have to click into it. And there's my workflow, just as I saw it on my today page, my calendar, on Tim's record, and then of course in the workflows tab. So, hey, Catherine, let's review. We have the today page, we have the calendar, we have the contact record, and we have the workflows tab. Am I missing anything?
Technically, we are missing something actually. So not from the CRM. And I know I already see someone like, wait, where else could I possibly go? It's not from this page, actually. I wanted to build it up and say that, hey, for all of those who use our mobile app, the workflow tasks show up in here too. So if you have not been on our mobile app in quite some time, even if you've never even used it either, this is something that you can actually see from there. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get my phone to share here. So that way we can see what it looks like. Give it a second here.
While she's doing that, I'll let you know my favorite part about the mobile app. It's completely free. All you need is a Redtail subscription and you can download that mobile app. It's available on Google Play. It's available on the Apple App Store. Just look for the red dog with the white background, search Redtail CRM, and you'll find it. And this is your CRM in your pocket.
Exactly. So even if you don't travel so much right now, like it's been almost a full year since it feels like I've left my house and I might be borderline losing it, but I still use the mobile app even when I'm in my own home. So when I come up here in this top, you'll see the 3 little lines. You can actually see workflows right at the bottom there. And that's going to actually give us a second, maybe not. We kind of cleared out. We'll refresh it. There we go. And I'm going to see all of my workflows. Now, this is similar to that workflow tabs from the first page where it's just that big overview. If you want to see more of that today page, that overall laundry list of all your tasks, you would click the My Task in the top. So they're kind of just toggle between the two. But one of my favorite things to do is if I know I've done something, but I also know I need to get up and stretch, maybe run to the restroom, maybe go to the kitchen and make my lunch, I can always come over here and complete that from here. I can edit it. I can always just click on it, expand it. So I'm going to go ahead and complete that. I'm actually going to find the ones for Tim. Let me see if I can get that going here. I think it's at the bottom. Let me give a second. But the biggest thing is that you literally have workflows at the palm of your hand. So there's the ones for prospect. Oops, went back up there. Scroll back down. There's the ones for prospecting calls for Tim Taylor. So if I actually already did that, I gave them a call, I can always click on it here. I can always click that circle with the check mark. Or again, if you didn't click into it, you can swipe to the left and complete from there. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and complete this. So that way we could see what that looks like. Now, if I also went ahead and sent that prospecting email, I can complete that from here. The really cool thing when we see this one is that if there are any outcomes, it also lets me pick from here. So let's go ahead and say, you know what? I haven't heard back from them. Reach out again, complete that step from here. And let's hop back into the CRM so that way we can see what that really looks like now that we've made some of those changes from our actual mobile app. So let's come on back here.
We're going to work through the rest of the workflow here. And you'll see that when we actually refresh this page here, that the mobile app is working in real time with the CRM. So completing something in the mobile app is going to make the changes at the exact moment inside the desktop version of the Redtail CRM because it's the same system. So what I want to do next is I want to just work through the remainder of this workflow. So let's go ahead and I want to visit the contact record if that's okay, Catherine, because I know we have a lot of tasks going on and sometimes just focusing on one contact at a time can be a good solution for that. And so here we go. I'm on Tim's record. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and I'm going to work through this prospecting workflow here. And let's go ahead and send out that second email. We're going to hit that complete button. And then Redtail, of course, is going to prompt us with the action. And so in this case, we can go ahead and move forward into our next step. So again, we reached out to Tim. We didn't get a hold of him. So let's just go ahead and move into step number 3. Now, I want you guys to remember something. When we were building the workflow template, we didn't actually get a chance to finish out all of our outcomes, but that was okay because what we can actually do is we can create outcomes on the fly if needed. So let's go ahead and open up Tim's workflow here. And I want to show you guys that you can create outcomes. Say, for example, you get to a certain step and you complete a task and you want another outcome, but you just can't get there because it wasn't built in the template. That's okay. We can go ahead and add them. So let's go ahead and choose the action button next to interaction number 3 here. And we can go ahead and add in an outcome.
Now, I do want to point out really fast that if you're not sure, you're always going to see how many outcomes are next to it. So if I actually click out here really quick, come to this one has that 3 view outcomes next to it. So let's go ahead, let's add that outcome though. And let's say this one, still have not heard back, go to interaction 4. So this is coming back to kind of what Curtis was saying earlier. You get to put whatever you want here. I like to keep mine very broad and very specific to say, hey, here's why I did go here. So I can always come over here, interaction number 4, create new outcomes. Or maybe at this point in time, I did actually get a hold of them. Maybe I didn't need to add that outcome. Maybe it was just a miscommunication. And I could actually just say, hey, they're interested. I'm going to put that exclamation point. Actually, I'm going to put a couple because I'm very excited about that. I can next step, pick where I'm going again. So sometimes we'll get that confusion as to what am I supposed to put for next step? Next step is literally the step you want to jump to, especially if you're going out of order. So I'm going to go ahead and create that new outcome. And now if I actually come over here, I'm going to see those 2 outcomes over here. Now, I don't say too often, but it's something to always just say, because I always love to point out that while the template might be a starting point, it's not always that end point. You can always remove outcomes if they don't make sense. You can always remove steps again if we don't need to. You can add new steps. You can add more tasks. So you're never limited to just that template. We understand that sometimes we come across clients who are, dare I say it, just a little bit needy. And we need to do a little bit more for them. You can always do that. So you can always add in more tasks on the fly, add in more outcomes for those situations that you never would have thought of, or even add in more steps, again, maybe just because we have to do that much more for them.
Another use case I want to talk about with adding outcomes on the fly is I sometimes get this in training calls where we'll have a Redtail user and they'll be working through a workflow and maybe they went a little too fast and they need to go backwards in a workflow. And then typically with an interaction like this, we're not typically going to be going from interaction number 3 to interaction number 2, unless of course we accidentally hit complete on interaction number 2 before it was actually completed. So if you're ever looking to go backwards in a workflow process, even after you've already completed, we don't have an uncomplete button, but outcomes can help send you backwards so you can go ahead and complete those items that you might have went over too quickly. And then of course, the same could apply if you were working through a workflow and you just weren't going through and hitting the complete button on some of those and you want to just skip to the end. So that way you can show the workflow is completed rather than having to click complete. Then you can go ahead and just have a outcome skip you to the end. So here we go. Catherine's going to build in an outcome that's going to take us back to step 2. So Catherine, let's go ahead and just complete step prospect number call 2 here. And let's go back to interaction number 2. So go ahead and hit the complete button on prospect call 2. And then it's going to ask us, oops, let's go back to interaction number 2. There we go. A confession about clicking too fast. All right, and we'll go ahead and complete the step. And you see Redtail now is going to send the process backwards a step.
Now we will also see these step notes. So as long as you're putting them in there, you will actually always find them over here. You will also find those at the top. Now, this is going to be a shameless plug of me here, but if you are not sure where these step notes come about, or if you've attempted workflows before and you've never seen those step notes as an option, that's because you don't have outcomes. Outcomes give you that benefit of a step note. Now, one thing I do want to clarify with step notes, though, is that those step notes only exist within this workflow. You will not see them as regular notes on the contact record. So if I pull open Tim's main contact page as its own, and I come to latest notes, I will not see those step notes here. Again, they only exist within here. So again, think of it as telling that story. Whoops, I clicked too fast. Oops, we don't need to do that. Hey, they actually are super proactive. We finished it early. Those are those, again, added benefits to saying what happened in this particular workflow.
So Catherine, question for you. What if I'm working through my prospecting workflow and I find out some new information about Tim that I want to save to his record? What would you recommend that I do?
I would actually, depending on really what it is, I might just add it to his regular contact record. So if it is something saying, hey, here's some just regular notes I need everyone in the office to be aware of, I'd come to his main contact record, add a note here, or from that plus sign, add the notes there. If it's something that, again, is directly impacting his main, I need everyone to be aware of. If it's something where it's just saying, hey, they at least let me know that they're on vacation, they'll respond back in 2 weeks. That might be where I have a step note and just repeating that process and resetting it for 2 weeks from now. So just always play it by ear. Just depends on the situation.
So if it's about the process or the workflow, that goes in the step notes. But if I actually want to make a note about the client or the prospect that I'm working with, I should put that on their contact record.
You got it. So glad we pointed that clarification out, because you're right. It's definitely something that we might get kind of confused on, or we sit there and go, well, that's not right. We don't want to deal with that. So again, step notes are from outcomes, and they are going to, again, go directly with this actual workflow. Now,
next, Catherine, I want to show them what happens when we actually finish out the workflow, like what happens at the very end of it.
I am glad you said that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to complete this step, and I'm actually going to jump down the saying that they're interested. We finally heard back from him, completed that step here. It's going to jump down to step 6 here really fast. I'm actually going to say we did both of those things, completed this step here, and I'm going to go ahead and mark it as completed. Everything is all set.
Everything is
Let's bring on Tim. Ooh, I can spell today. There we go. Bring on Tim, complete my step. Now that was the very last step in this whole process. Now, if we look at a couple of these things, we're actually seeing skip by outcome, skip by outcome. That's because we never actually went to those and we never did those. So anytime we jump over those steps, if I would have even just completed outcome from step 1 and just went immediately to interested, all of these would have seen skip by outcome because they were not necessary. Now, Austin, this does one more thing though, right?
That's right. So when we complete the workflow, 2 things are going to happen. First, let's go to Tim's notes section because I want to show people that when you complete a note, it looks like we need to set our note filters there on the right-hand side.
Can you definitely
the
right.
type for workflows here? There we
Just
go. Let's go ahead and apply them all. And we can see that because we completed a workflow for Tim, Redtail is going to document that. It's going to timestamp it and date stamp it and make a record that we completed this workflow process for Tim on this day and this time. And then of course, if we need to, we can always click back into that process and still see those step notes as needed. So there we go. Our step notes are still accessible. Now they're not necessarily in Tim's note feed, but they are still available by clicking on that link. The other place it's going to show up is if we go to the workflows tab there on the left-hand side.
Talking about here, or are we talking about within his?
We're talking about on the left. Sorry, the one at the bottom.
I was like, wait, I'm going to even ask a trick question.
Yes, there we go. In fact, both of these would do the same thing. But what I wanted to show you is now that we've completed that with Tim, we can go to the completed section here and we can view our completed workflows. So if you need to find a workflow after it's finished, you can go to the workflows tab here, go to the complete section, and you'll see that it is listed.
And then just like it is with tasks, it shows up yet again in more places. Even though it says 0 active workflows, if you came back to his record, you'd have basically that same complete option here. Now, one other thing with that note, and if I come back here, this is going to save that no filter. So let me go back in here. Let me click on those 2 workflows so that way it pops open again and apply them. Is that technically you can also see those step notes from this action button at the bottom. So if anyone's ever pinned that note before, if you click on that action, you'd see the step notes right below that and would have all of that, again, history telling that we have in here. Now, one more thing that I actually always like to point out, when we set up our template, it had asked us to pick a category. So I'm going to come back up here to that quick add, come back over to that workflow template. This filled in that category of customer service. If you have gone ahead and created a category of like prospecting and your template hasn't had that set up, you can technically change that category after the fact, but I would encourage just immediately set that correctly under the template itself. So it's not again to say that you can't fix it later, but try to set yourself up with success by putting as much as physically possible within that template right out of the gate.
Okay, so if I want to save my workflow completion note under a certain category, I should add that to the template.
You got it. So I'm going to switch this here because I want to be able to find this particular workflow note maybe 6 months from now. I don't know my future self. Who knows what I'll be looking for. But now I can always search those notes with that prospecting category. Again, it's just helping our future self 6 months down the road, a year down the road, find what we're actually looking for. So
awesome. So Catherine, I was curious to know, because I like this workflow process. I like that I can build a process and I can put it into place. My only problem is I have a team, they're kind of forgetful, and I can't trust them to just go to the plus button every time and click workflows and start the processes as they should be. Is there any way that I can like maybe automate this process?
You are absolutely correct, actually. And I will even say myself, that's a lot for me to remember sometimes. There's too much going around. I might just add the contact and forget about it. But that is something that we can do, which is called an automation. So appropriately named. But what exactly is an automation? An automation really is something that's saying that if something happened in the CRM, I want something else to happen in return. So literally phrasing it, if certain events occur within your database, further actions will happen automatically. So this is going to be yet another template. So it's going to reside in the same section as workflows. But before we actually hop into the database, I did want to kind of run through it almost as like a dry run. So we're actually going to keep these here because they're going to be useful here in a second. But really, what goes into actually building an automation? So I kind of created this little chart here and even added a little chart here as well to help really define what it is that goes into it and what are my options. So the very first thing that you'll get asked is, what in the world is on this event? On this event is the actual action. And the actions that you have to choose from are from this list itself. So if you have an address or phone number or an email that's been added or changed, that could trigger something to happen. If I add a contact, add an activity, add an account, that could be again an action. If I change the name or status of someone, that could trigger a reaction. So once you've picked what the action is, it'll then give you the option to say, okay, well, what do you want me to do? That's that reaction. So if I add a contact, well, I want it to link that workflow I created. Or, hey, we have a status change. I want to let the whole office be aware of that. You can have, again, kind of combinations, and you can actually even have multiple automations working at the same time. But the first step on this event is that action leads to do this action. Now we are going to build a couple of them here. So I know this is one of those, what is this saying? I need to see this. But again, the biggest thing is you're going to pick from this list of actions, which will give you this list of reactions. And then we'll talk further about this whole concept of conditions, because obviously there are certain times where we don't want that workflow to link or that email to go out. So
let's do it, Catherine. Let's jump into the CRM and let's build an automation template. And today, guys, I want to actually show you two automation templates. So first, we're going to build one that's just a very simple, when something happens in Redtail, we're going to send an email to notify a team member. Okay. And so to do that, we're going to go to the manage your account section here.
So back to your name, manage your account.
And then we're going to open up automation templates, second option under the manage templates option. All right. And so to create a new automation template, I'm going to click the add button here at the top. And the first thing I actually like to do with creating automations is just to give it a description. So why am I building this automation? What do I intend for it to do? So in this case, what we're going to build today is an automation that when we have a client that passes away, an email gets sent out to my team, letting them know about that, because we want to be sensitive and we want to send our condolences, and we want to make sure that everybody is equally informed that that is happening, because as we know, death can be a sensitive topic and we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So client passes away is going to equal an email notification. And so now we'll just go ahead and give it a title. I'm going to call this the client death automation. All right. And then the first thing we're going to do is pick that action like Catherine just told us about. So what is triggering this to happen? And this is going to be when a contact status is changed. All right. And now we're going to click on the do this action button. And this is going to take us to what is the reaction. So in this case, I want to email my team, and I'm going to choose the team that I want to email. So let's go ahead and just email the all staff.
All staff. There we are.
That way everybody is in tune. Now, the way that I have this written right now is anytime a contact status is changed, it's going to email my staff. And my staff already gets irritated with the amount of emails that I send them already. And so I really only want to send them in particular instance. So Catherine, can you explain to us what these conditions mean?
Yeah. So before we hop in and say, hey, this is exactly what we want, conditions are what's going to actually limit when that automation triggers. So you have two options. There's the if any or versus the if all. If you're running into a situation like this particular one where there's the client, maybe even just like a status change itself, we want to let everyone know that that person's no longer with our firm. It could be a status where, hey, it's equal to deceased or inactive client. So if you're running into a situation where it's something that you're saying, well, it could happen at this time or at that time or at this time, that's when if any should automatically pop into your head. On the reverse, if we're trying to get it so it's extremely specific, I only want this automation to work if this particular thing happens, that is an if all. So again, kind of just keywords to remember. If all, extremely specific scenario. If any, this or that is really the words to remember. So let's come on back, because this one is pretty specific. It's a client death.
Yeah, so I'm going to choose if all the conditions are true. And because I only want it to do it when the contact status is changed to deceased. So if we go to if all conditions true, let's go ahead and add a new condition. And the condition is going to be when a contact status is equal to and deceased. And we'll go ahead and add that condition. So again, this is just a very simple example to illustrate what automations can do in a very simplistic term. Now, what I want to do next is I want to go back to that example that I mentioned previously, where I don't want to have to trust my team that they're going to go to the plus button and add the workflow every time. I want that to happen automatically. So I'm going to do another example of an automations. And let's go ahead and do the same process. So we're going to add, and let's give it a description. Yep, good, title. And let's tell the description when a new contact is added, or excuse me, not contact, let's do prospect. When a new prospect is added. Link prospecting workflow.
Actually, I'm going to make it even more specific. All right.
Very detailed description. Yes, that's going to help us remember exactly what this does. So let's select the trigger event. This is the action. So the action is going to be when a contact is added. Let's go to the reaction. We're going to click on do this action. And the reaction is going to be, we're going to link the workflow template. So let's choose link workflow and choose the RTU Online prospecting call workflow template. And again, in this case, we have some specific examples where we want to only link it when it is a prospect, but sometimes we might enter them as leads as well. So let's go to if any conditions are true this time. And what I want to do is I'm going to create two conditions. So the first one is going to be if we add it with the status equal to prospect. I'm going to go ahead and add the condition, but I also know that sometimes my team will enter in new contacts as leads. So I'm going to go ahead and create another condition for contact status equal to lead. And so what this does is no matter if a contact gets added as a prospect or a contact gets added as a lead, it's going to know to automatically link that prospecting workflow. So I think the next order of business is to test it out. Let's see if it actually works. So go ahead and create the automation. And we're going to go ahead and add a new contact to the CRM with either the status of lead or the status of prospect.
Exactly. Sorry, I'm like losing my mouse there. There we go. So one more tip that I also like to give, if you ever are questioning the automation, because sometimes when it's new, we're sitting here going, is that right? Did I do that correctly? Run it almost like a sentence. So with that one that we just actually created, if I click on that whole prospect, sorry, I don't know what's going on with my mouse here. It's just disappearing on me. But when we actually have it, you can read it as, when I want this prospecting to happen, it's when a contact is added, link that prospecting workflow if it's equal to lead or prospect. So let me see what's going on with my mouse. There we go. And let's actually run through it like Austin just said. So let's go ahead and add a new contact. So I'm going to come up to this little plus sign at the top. That's our quick add. Come on down to contacts. I'm going to add in a new individual person. Now I'm actually going to put in another person that we had from good old tool time, which I want to say I've spelled her name right here. It's Heidi, I believe Kempler is the last name. I might have spelled that wrong. But another thing I like to point out is sometimes with our prospects, all we have is a name and a phone number. And that's all we technically really need to add in right now. So I'm going to scroll on down and give her a phone number here. I'm just going to put in something. There we go. I think I have the right amount of digits. Yep. Let me select my primary mobile. Got it here. And again, maybe that's all I need. However, if we want that automation to work, we needed one of those two statuses. So before I actually save and add this new contact, I'm going to scroll on down until we actually see contact details. And under status, this is where I can either pick lead or prospect. So coming back to what Austin said earlier, maybe I always add them in as lead first if I only have their name and phone number. On the reverse, maybe my coworker does this. That might be, again, where that whole style guide comes in and really guides you to pick the right one. But as long as I pick one or the other, that automation will work to link that workflow. So I'm going to click prospect here. And again, I'm not even going to touch anything else. I'm going to just add those three things in there. The name.
Your sleeve? No sleeves today? Nothing?
Nope. Just that's it. That's it. That's all I'm going to do. So I'm going to scroll on down. And I'm actually going to save this contact. We'll give the CRM just a moment here. We've got Heidi here, immediately redirects us. I've got that phone number, I've got that status, but most importantly, right up here at the top, there's now one active workflow. If I scroll on down, there's those same tasks we saw earlier. If we hop back to the today page, yet again, we'll see even more tasks for us. So really feel bad for Tucker. There's quite a bit to go in here. Same with if I come over to workflow tasks, I'll see the ones that we have for Heidi over here as well. So that's really that whole extra step. I like to consider it that magic trick. It's kind of just being my second brain. It's there, it's automatic. But again, it's that helpful thing to say, hey, you don't forget about adding it in here, and this will guide us to actually do that. So same as we did earlier, we'll work through this process and actually complete it. Now, one thing I do want to point out, since this actual workflow has this, the template that we designed had actual advisor, had those role options. So this is to really help bring everything we've talked about for almost the last 2 hours home. This template we created had those assignee tasks for advisor and CSA. When we added Heidi, we did not add in their advisor and the CSA, so it did not give us the assigned to tasks. If I had added in here, these would have automatically gone to the appropriate advisor and CSA. So not to say, again, coming back, that you can't reassign it later on. I can always come over here and say, hey, I'll knock this one out today. And then you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give this one also to Tucker. It'll give you then that option of those assigned to. So the biggest thing I'll always stress is the more details you have, add it into that contact. But if not, you can always adjust it later on and assign those tasks if you need to. So
Catherine, I've been tracking with you. I worked with Curtis and we built the workflow template, and now we're using the workflow and we even automated it. I know that we're using prospecting examples, but is there any other examples that I could use workflows and automations for? And if so, where can I find those?
Oh gosh, yes. There's so many different situations. Now, this is always going to give you like your starting point, your guide. By all means, adapt it to what works best for you. But if you ever do want to just get more ideas, you're sitting there going, okay, I got prospecting done. I want onboarding. I want client reviews. I want all of that. This is going to be one of those times where that help desk is a great resource for you. So if you click on the question mark in the top right, come on down to help desk. Now I'm actually just going to search because I do this frequently. It's right at the top, sample templates. Over here, we can find workflow templates, automation templates, even activity templates, which we'll briefly talk about again tomorrow. All of this will make a reappearance. But over here, we can find the exact workflow we built and give you some other ideas to get you going. So now that you know how to build it, now you know how it works, here's that spot to take it one step further and make those processes for the other situations you run into. All right.
Heidi.
I think we went through everything. I'm trying to remember. I'm like, I believe that's everything here.
I think you
So
got it.
I know, I'm like, wait, I'm actually really impressed. So that's everything we're going to run through as far as today. I do want to go ahead and bring it back to the PowerPoint though. I'll also go ahead and invite Curtis and Haley, if they are there, to come back because we're going to just wrap up this session. Now, I know there's quite a few questions out there. And if you have any, we'll definitely make sure we go through those. But before we hop into it, this is always just that reminder to say that, hey, we're available even after this session. So you can always reach out to support and training at 800-206-5030. You can email us. You can always pop up to our website. There's also that, again, question mark on the today page, or I'm sorry, not the today page, in the CRM that can get those. And you can also find this on social media. So anywhere you seem to look, you're going to find us.
Yeah. I also wanted to invite everybody to come back tomorrow. We're going to be doing same thing tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. We got taking some of the tools that we learned today, and we're going to put them into action. We're going to talk first about our prospecting cycle and how to improve and enhance that with workflows, but also with some other tools in the CRM. Then we're going to look at the client onboarding process, an essential part of an advisory office, being able to take somebody from prospect into client and manage everything in between. And then finally, we're going to end the day with client management, taking a deep dive into client reviews and how we can better manage and create better client experiences for our clients during their annual review meetings. So come back and enjoy us tomorrow. Again, we're going to kick things off 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you there.
Perfect.
So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Now we'll still stay on for any of those questions because, like I said, I know there's quite a few still in there. So if you have them, don't go yet. We're gonna see if we can process those as soon as we can here. So let's see if we can kind of help out Rick here. Let's see.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.
One question that came in from Celeste, I'm just going to answer this live. Celeste asked, I missed where automations are located. Where do I find those? So automations are templates. So you can build your automations by going to your name on the top right and then choosing manage your account. And then it'll be under the manage templates section. So to create automations, you're going to go to the manage your account and then manage. Oh, thank you, Catherine. So manage your account and then manage templates to create the automation templates. That's where they start out. And then if you want examples of automation, sorry, Haley, if you want examples of automations, just search in our help desk templates or sample or automation templates, and you can find examples of those.
Adriana asked if the webinar in March, the RTU Online webinar in March is the same or different. It's going to be the same presentation. So you're more than welcome to join us again, but it's going to be the same presentation again in March.
They say once you learn something, I think it's within like 20 minutes, you've already forgotten 50% of it. So you're more than welcome
about what?
Back. What's that?
Forgot about what?
Welcome to come back because, again, like the Catherine said, this was a fire hose of just everything, workflows and automations and cleanups. And those are not easy tools in Redtail CRM. We're not talking notes and activities today. These are probably for the more intermediate to advanced user. And so if you are just kind of getting started off and you missed some things today, if you want to come back in March, you're more than welcome to.
Now, today we did cover a lot of workflows. Like we're going to do more things tomorrow. But if you say, hey, that was too much on workflows, I want more. Wait, that way I need to get more specific to workflows. In April, starting on April 8th, every Thursday in April, other than the first one, we are actually doing a series on workflows. So it's actually a 4-part series. We're taking the 2 sessions we did into workflows today, splitting into 4 sessions. So we're going to be even more specific, more detailed. It's a great way. We already did the session last year. It's available on the help desk. You can search for the workflow series, but we will be repeating it for our Thursday webinars if you want to get more in depth on workflows again.
Right. And then another thing to point out, because I did see something from, looks like it's an anonymous source who found maybe the prospecting workflow wasn't as efficient for them because the process was just so quick. You do not have to necessarily have a prospecting workflow, but maybe an onboarding workflow would be more efficient for you, where it's taking some of those tidbits from prospecting, merging it into one, which we'll actually be talking about tomorrow. So I definitely recommend coming back for tomorrow to really talk about those specific scenarios to see if maybe something else would work for you.
Yeah, it's a great point, Catherine. When people start off with workflows, I always encourage them to start off with things that are simple and they know how to do well already. Because trying to do something complex or something that you're not very good at in learning technology at the same time can make things difficult. So if you're not very a prospecting heavy office, then maybe stick to something like client reviews that you're more familiar with and use some of the same strategies and tools that we built with the prospecting workflow in a client review capacity. And you can find those samples on the Redtail help desk.
So we did get a question here from Kristen where it's saying, is there a way to use automations for everyone in the office, or does each person need to set up their own automations? For example, if I have an automation I want to use for all 15 employees, can we do that in one place? Or do we have to have each person manually add it themselves? So if it's something like the scenario we just ran through, where if we add a contact, we want it to trigger that workflow, it's going to be something that's the whole database wide. So if I add it, it'll trigger that workflow. If Curtis adds it, triggers that workflow. Austin adds it, triggers that workflow. So it does become more database wide versus specific by person. Hopefully that helps.
One other thing in here, a question says, will you guys be discussing reports tomorrow? Now, we don't necessarily have a section where we're going to say, here, we're going to cover everything about reports. Tomorrow, we're focusing, like Austin said, we're going to do prospecting, client onboarding, client reviews as our 3 main topics. and we will discuss any reports that are in relation to those topics. Now, just because it's just those topics doesn't mean you can't learn about the report for other processes and scenarios. So that's really, we're going to be talking about those types of processes and what you can do for them. So in a way, we will be skirting on reports a little bit, but we will show you definitely what's useful.
And if you need like a full deep dive of reports and you are looking for an hour session on just that, I want to say we did do a Redtail Essentials on reports. Am I right, Curtis?
Yeah,
We did.
Okay.
So
I sent that link a couple times.
yeah, our Redtail, our Thursday webinars, every Thursday at 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, we do a different topic. And you can actually search for our live recorded webinars. And you'll see Catherine has up on the screen where here's a list of every recorded webinar for essentially from the past year. A lot of them start with the word Redtail or the phrase Redtail Essentials. If it's Redtail Essentials and then report says we only talk about reports from start to finish. It's a great way to go in and take a look and just learn about what's available in the CRM.
Exactly.
All right. We have no open questions. We're 5 minutes done early. Like that's
What is
very
going
much unlike
on?
us.
Edwin just chimed in with a what's what I'm looking for, a sentiment that I agree with. Edwin, I also cannot wait for us to do this in person again in the future. I can't wait to have a trapped audience again in a single room.
I cannot wait to be around people again. I'm actually more terrified because I've lost all social skills.
Yeah.
I just don't know how to interact with people within 6 feet of myself anymore. So we'll see how I'm going to slowly ease myself back into like live presentations. So if in the future, if you come to an RTU and I accidentally snap at you, I apologize.
So
If I'm out of breath running up the aisles, it's because I haven't done a lot of physical activity.
right.
My favorite phrase in a grocery store is 6 feet. Yelling at people, 6 feet.
You go to the grocery store?
I know. I do.
With a stick.
I signed up for a meal service last summer and I get all my food brought to me.
Rick hasn't left the house in 3 years.
Nope, pretty much. Adriana just asked a very important question, which is how long will this recording be available? Forever, until we do it again. Every person on this webinar, whether you've been on Zoom, YouTube, whatever, we will send a follow-up kind of packet with not only the slides, we're going to send you the links. These will be posted on our YouTube channel, on our help desk, literally until next year, pretty much. Like they will be available for you to watch. So there's no limit. You can always revisit them. As I said, are not clients, for example, former client. Oh, that's a good question.
I love this question.
Do you want that one, Haley?
Can I please?
Yes.
Okay, so what would you use for categories under contact statuses that are not clients? So in this scenario, you've got someone who's moved from a lead to a prospect to a client, and now they've left for whatever reason. They've gone to inactive or former client. What category would you use? They would keep the category that they had when they were a client. So if they were a client and they had a category of gold, when you change the status, you're not changing the category. You're only changing the status to inactive or former or whatever verbiage you have there. And the reason for that is so you can run later reports and see how many gold clients have gone inactive, how many tinfoil clients have gone inactive. Am I seeing a lot of turnover with my silver specifically? And maybe I'm not personally touching them as often as I should be, or calling them or engaging with them as often as I should be. So they're really going to keep that same category that they had when they were an active client. At least that's our typical recommendation.
You know, really, Haley, with the tinfoil reference now, I really want to change our categories to tinfoil, parchment paper, and plastic wrap.
I think it's my favorite.
What's the high value one?
They're similar. They all work for different things. Like
press and seal.
This is next year's theme. We're really gonna dive into cooking and like in the kitchen, like
cloth.
I love it.
Yep, and the whole thing will be stirring up Redtail. Literally.
Stirring up Redtail. I like that. Rick, write that down.
Stirring up Redtail. I like it. Tony, my pleasure. Thanks for sitting in with us for the entire time. Especially when it comes to integrations, and I'll say this to everybody, we'll integrate with anybody. We have an open API, like we have a really solid integrations team. Ask Austin. We've built integrations with more people in the past year than I think we did in like years prior. So we are always absolutely willing to build integrations out. It's just a matter of getting them to do it as well. So if PySync, ActiveCampaign, if they're on board, we're on board. And yeah, we'd like to make it happen. So I feel you.
Not only that, but we also have a lot of really cool changes coming to existing integrations as well. So improvements that are being made. So you might have an integration that you're currently using, but I would say subscribe to the Red Tails newsletter. We do these things called best practice partner spotlights, where you can come learn about either a new integration partner that Red Tail has, or an enhanced version of an existing Red Tail integration, and show how it helps an advisor save time or money. They're really valuable if you're using multiple softwares to get your day-to-day done.
Good deal. That puts us at our time, boys and girls.
Let's just answer that one really quick. So newsletter, quick way to do that, only because I still have the CRM open. If you come up to that question mark, Redtail newsletter is actually a box you can click right at the bottom, which will bring you to the sign up page. So when in doubt, go to that question mark and you'll always get redirected to that right place. Ooh.
Oh man. All right, this is the last one. We gotta make the cutoff, but this is the last question. Everybody has to answer it. What's your favorite feature of Redtail?
Ooh.
The CRM. Let's say CRM, not like the company or the fact that I can wear a goofy hat.
Favorite feature of the Redtail CRM. Okay.
I'll go first. I personally love the automations. I think the potential there is incredible. And the fact is if you do the math on how much just a couple of clicks can save you each day and multiply that by the number of weeks in a year and multiply that by 10 years, you can understand how much time you can actually save. And for an advisor, their time is their money. So while it might seem insignificant that we're skipping 2, 3, maybe 4 clicks, it can make a world of a difference and actually equal more time with your clients, which equals more money in your pocket. So that's why automations are one of my favorites. Also, I'm just lazy, and I'm gonna
jump in and say, honestly, it's the most basic thing, and you would think it might be workflows for me, but it's honestly notes. I am the person who writes something on a sticky note, sticks it on my computer, it falls behind, and I forget about it. Notes save you sanity.
So I'm going to feedback both of those concepts, sanity as well as time clicking, saving the activity templates. Just that brings so much of that monotonous clicking you find yourself down. Just it's so much easier to just click one drop down and have everything pre-fill and takes the guesswork out. So mine is hands down activity templates.
All right,
I mean,
Haley.
you're not going to be shocked. Mine's the search. You can't really know where you're going unless you know where your data is. So I love the search. I could spend hours talking about all of the available searches and the more complex and simple searches that you can run, and then all of the possibilities that you have running off each of those searches as well.
There's 300 people still on the call sticking in with us. I want to hear from them. Put it in the chat. What is your favorite feature of Redtail? Throw it in the chat, not the Q&A. Throw it in the chat for me. I want to see a bunch light up there. I will say that my favorite feature is a basic one. It's user-defined fields. One of my biggest sort of pulpits that I stand on, one of my soapboxes, is that people need to be connected with on a deeper level nowadays. They need to be connected with on more than just the money in their portfolio or the education that they went through or their gender or their age. They need to be connected with on more than that. And so user-defined fields help you as a user collect all of that personal information, collect what their favorite coffee is, what their favorite soda is, what their pet's name is. Those little details are where you build relationships. That is the foundation. Those little details make up the bulk of what is valuable in your relationship. And it's really underutilized. So that is my favorite one, the ability for users to put those details in and reference them. Those are my favorite for sure. As far as the Q&A goes, we've never given out a Q&A before, mostly because, I mean, it can be chaotic, but I will say that I'm going to explore trying to put together a abbreviated Q&A or a little bit more of a cleaned up Q&A that we can distribute. I'm not going to make any promises to those on the call, but I'm going to see what we can do about it. Redtail Speak, contact information, help center. Kay, I feel you, Kay. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to put a pin in it for everybody. And I want to thank everybody else. Oh, yes, Curtis,
Rick,
go ahead.
Kay, who, if we mention Kay a lot because Kay is on every single one of our webinars, I think she's probably our favorite. I do apologize because she joins us. She interacts with us. Thank you, Kay. A lot of other people are regulars too. We appreciate you. And the best thing and why Kay really sticks out so much is she likes to call Ricky Redtail Olaf. It makes me so happy. So thank you, Kay.
Why is Ricky Redtail's hat white? Because I'm the team lead. Pretty much
it was the prototype.
It was the prototype.
That's fine.
So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for being a part of this today. We hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks again. Excellent job by all of our trainers. But I'm going to end this and wrap this up and wish you all a great rest of your day. So thank you so much again. And we'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one. Stay safe.